Good afternoon. It is 5:08 p.m. on June 3rd, 2026, at the District of Columbia State Board of Education working session is now called to order. The working session is being streamed live on the State Board YouTube page for members of the public to view. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Director Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Chamberlain,
Present.
Representative Dinkins, Representative Mozambique,
Present.
Representative Waree, Representative Best, Representative Chang,
Present.
Representative Colson, Representative Henderson,
Present.
Representative Johnson Law,
Good evening and present.
Representative Thompson, Representative Williams,
Present.
Vice President Goulet,
Present.
President Patterson.
Present.
You have quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Director. The quorum has been determined. The State Board will now proceed with the meeting. And the first thing up is the leadership report. Members, it is in your email boxes at this particular time. Since it is relatively short, I'll just read through it. Basically, in the month of May, we met with Dr. Mitchell and the Office of the State Superintendent and her staff on May 13th, and the chairman and his staff on May 20th. In our meeting with Dr. Mitchell and staff, the agenda consists of the following items: graduation requirements, feedback timelines, AI work at OSSI, potential publishing the superintendent's remarks from the public meetings, SR 26-9, calling for a development of the appropriate kindergarten compulsory age cutoff in DC. And then in our meeting with the chairman and his staff, the meeting consisted of all the updates that we have every time we meet with them, update on budget requests, strategic priorities and KPIs, update on the graduation requirement. Additionally, we met out of cycle with the Deputy Mayor of Education, just to provide an update on graduation task force goals, kind of recommendations. We were joined in that meeting by the task force co-chair, Representative Robert Henderson from Board 5, Representative Evan Rose Thompson from Board 7. But I would like to say at this point is I really want to thank Director Butler for all her work, for diligent work on some things that were very important for us, which is the system in the whole council chamber, so we can get back to doing virtually. And with Octo, this was no small feat on your half, because there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of push and pull and those things, and we don't take that lightly that you charge hard, but so thank you so much. That is my report, and I am happy to entertain any questions for contact on some of the things that were discussed in either of the meetings. I'm not seeing what.
I'm sorry,
Go
what
ahead.
is the update on the budget?
Well, what we talked about in particular on the budget he hit a few points where they thought they were gonna make some additions with money, what he could cover that was coming out of the budget, that he thought there might be some things that were cut in the mayor's proposal that he might be able to kind of fill some of the gaps. So he gave us an update on those things, and right off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly which ones they were. He gave us that update. And then we just talked basically about two items that we had concerning the Octo. And there was a $19,000 increase in Octo, and then the 38 with the big the device. So we discussed that as well.
Sorry. Maybe I should be. So did he give us any updates on our priorities that we sent over? And then I think when you're saying the increase, we're talking about Octo's requests for the out of cycle charges that we're talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Go ahead.
so in that meeting, what he reviewed were the things that the council of the whole was funding in the education budget, which he's already put out now. So those things technically are already out, which is, so he just shared those ahead of when they were supposed to come out. So that was nothing new. He did share with us in terms of our agency requests, one was for the Octo fees, that we were not gonna get that money, he was asking Octo to fix it on their end. But he did tell us that they were gonna give us, which is also what the council of the whole release, the $38,000 to vote towards fixing old council chambers technology so that we can get back to our hybrid capacity in those meetings. So he confirmed that, which aligns with what they put out. But he didn't address like what we put in a letter specifically, but our team has done an analysis of that and we can share it with you.
I'm ready to things.
Is there any other questions?
I'm assuming the chamber changes won't take effect until the upcoming fiscal year.
No, ma'am, that's FY 26 supplemental. We've already started that conversation with them. And our AFO confirmed the 38,000, but that's the communication that he got from the council budget office. And so we were able to start those conversations on Monday with the DGS and Octo. To get that work started, the goal is that it will hit our budget to be able to spend in July. But we are starting the conversations now in June, so we don't wait till July to start the process, so that we can have it hybrid in August.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. I now will turn to the Director of the Forward Report.
Good evening, members of the DC State Board of Education. During the month of May, the SBOE team in partnership with Make the Challenge, the Office of the Chief Student Advocate and Ed Trust executed a successful youth leadership summit. Thank you to the many government agency partners who agreed to join us as decision makers. The event would not have been successful without their willingness to work alongside our students to fine tune their recommendations demonstrated the district's commitment to proactively engaging and listening to youth voices. The SBOE team is excited to welcome Sana Alex Muhammad as our summer fellow who's on the end to our team. She will be joining us for the summer through August, end of August. She will be working on policy communications and operations over the next 3 months. The team is also participated in the quarterly Compact 2043 coalition meeting, and I participated in my first NASB national conference planning meeting. Dr. Pleasure also submitted a workshop proposal highlighting our SAC work for the national. As the summer gets underway, SBOE is planning an open house in August, kicking off our SBOE website redesign and finalizing the agency's first set of standard operating procedures to align HR, procurement, budget, and communications across all 3 offices. The draft SOPs will be shared with the admin committee in August for approval. Later this summer, we will also welcome 2 Make the Challenge students to help elevate and share out the SAC recommendations from their annual report with members of the council. Next, we need members' help to increase applications for our student advisory committee and our school year 26-27 student representatives. Applications close on June 21st, 2026. Please share broadly and encourage student participation. Lastly, please note that beginning June 5th, I will be on medical leave, returning July 6th. An email detailing my time out of office will be shared with members by the close of business on Thursday, June. I last would like to wish our Deputy Director, Jen Briona, happy birthday. So we are excited to celebrate with her this report. Are there any questions?
All right. Thank you, Director. At this time, I'm pleased to turn the meeting over to our student representatives who will present their student advisory committee annual report.
Okay, so we're gonna go over the SAC annual report, once the slides come up so that everyone can see it. Everyone should have the full annual report in your inboxes, if I'm not mistaken. But we're just gonna be going over what we've been able to do in this past academic year with every single SAC meeting. So, if we can move to the next slide.
1 second. So.
So the purpose of our annual report is to summarize what we've been up to in our monthly meetings from September until June, so from 2025 to 2026. And also to highlight the work of the SAC, what we have been able to do that hasn't been within our reports during each working session. And we also are going to talk about the research and recommendations that the SAC members have provided. Celebrate the service of all of the members of the SAC. So into the research and recommendations portion. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you can see page 15 of the report for more detailed approaches about our research, but we were able to partner with the DC Education Research Collaborative and researchers from 3 universities, which was a very cool opportunity for us. And we used the Youth Participatory Action Research Framework in order to guide research on 5 educational issues. And this was a really cool process because it basically put students in the driver's seat of the research process as opposed to just having the adults kind of go over whatever we were researching. And we researched in 5 issues. So the first is college and career readiness. Second is student mental health resources. The third is school safety. And then the 4th and 5th were individual projects about school meals and school nurses. And during our monthly SAC meetings, we had a whole sort of timeline and vision for these projects, which started off with identifying a vision, a problem that we wanted to research, and then formulating research questions surrounding that topic, and then developing data collection instruments, so things like surveys and interviews. Then we analyzed the data and then finally agreed on recommendations and finalized that within the report. So now we're going to get into each of the 5 issues that we were able to research.
So first we have the college and career readiness group. They asked the questions, how does accessibility or usage of college and career readiness resources vary across wards and schools? Essentially trying to identify where the discrepancies were. Where does readiness mean? What does it mean to students at different schools and across different wards? And how do demographics affect what resources and paths are available and encouraged for college and career? Along for the data collection, district-wide surveys had about 195 respondents, and the responses disproportionately came from Friendship Technology. We saw this among other groups as well, where a large amount of the results came from one specific school. But 3 interviews with students were conducted by SAC members, and they took place virtually. Recommendations include considering a scale-up approach to college and career preparation, making college and career fairs and workshops more common and accessible across all wards, and making sure that advanced opportunities are not only valued, but also available and accessible for all, along with increasing professional development for teachers related to the college application process, making sure that these students feel supported during the process, knowing how stressful it can be. And further recommendations can also be found on page 17.
Okay, now on to student mental health resources, which was my group. So we identified a couple of research questions. The first was what resources are currently available to students, and to sort of tackle that question, we created this inventory of all resources that were publicly available that we found that were provided within DC public schools. The second question was what barriers exist, whether those are real barriers or perceived attitudinal barriers between students and available services. The third was what experiences do students have receiving mental health support within DC schools. And for our data collection, we had 2 main sort of prongs to this. The first was we surveyed 201 high school students representing 11 schools across 6 wards, including both public and public charter schools throughout DC. Like Nyla mentioned, a lot of these responses were also from Friendship Tech as well. They were kind of disproportionately skewed that way. And we also collected data from 11 students using open-ended survey questions and conducting an online interview. And for our recommendations, we had a couple here. The first was to facilitate lessons on students about mandatory reporting. A lot of students reported having perceived barriers to accessing mental health services because they were not sure of what actually qualified for them to be reported to like parents and health professionals, as opposed to things that they could just talk about more freely. And that was certainly a barrier to achieving like actual mental health support. The second was obtaining more clarity on the ways of different referral processes actually and how they work, and facilitating lessons for students on available resources and actually how to access them. We had a survey question where a lot of students were able to basically respond as to what services they knew of within their schools, but we also did a separate inventory of what DCPS said was available. And DCPS said that referral services were definitely available, but a lot of students were not aware that that was even an opportunity that they were able to access. The third was increasing students' trust in the available supports at school. I think over 53% of the respondents said that they found support within other peers rather than like a dedicated school counselor or licensed psychologist. The fourth was getting a better understanding of the differences in awareness, trust, and needs for resources for students in different grades and genders, and then designing and facilitating specific activities and services for upperclassmen who may feel unsupported by their schools. We did another particular question within the survey, and we found that disproportionately juniors and seniors were feeling significantly less supported in their mental health compared to freshmen and sophomores. So one of our recommendations was having more targeted, specific support and curricula dedicated to upperclassmen. And our fifth recommendation was taking a preventative approach to mental health issues and making mental health support an ongoing strategy as opposed to a series of one-time, one-off disconnected activities. So making sure that this is something that we forefront throughout high school education from like 9th all the way to 12th grade.
Continuing on with school safety. So the research question was, what makes a student feel safe or unsafe in schools? We noted that this was a very big question, and students had a lot of differing opinions. A lot of students expressed their concerns with the cell phone policy. Students also expressed concerns with dress code, metal detectors, school resource officers, and school protocol when it comes to drills and how to facilitate the drills. So for data collection, there were surveys distributed and received 256 responses from students from 18 different schools. And again, Friendship Tech Prep Academy and District of Columbia International School overrepresented the survey data because it made up 47% and 21% of the sample, respectively. For recommendations that the state board should reevaluate its stance on the cell phone policy. A lot of students felt like when it came to student safety specifically, they didn't feel as if the policies aligned. School safety policies should apply to teachers and students. We also took a look at how school policies affect teachers as well because of how they have to administer the policies, specifically referring to drill protocol and how teachers also need support in that area. Public schools and public charter schools should have more rigorous policies in place for screening teachers and school staff for safety concerns. A lot of students expressed that they didn't feel as if the current protocol or screening process was effective and had concerns about how communication between students and families should be facilitated. And schools should offer more information and transparency around the safety policies to students and communicate clearly and quickly following any incidents, just more of how to approach the aftermath and how to make sure that students and families alike are still in the know. Recommendations for future research can also be found on page 20.
Hello, you all. So I had the joy of working with the independent groups, and we had a couple of kids working on the school meals. So the main questions that they were asking, mostly within their own schools, were how satisfied are students at DCI and Duke Ellington with their school meals in terms of nutrition, taste, and portion size, which is something we hear a lot about from the students in the SAC. And then what recommendations do DCI and Duke Ellington students offer to improve the quality of meals in their school? So kind of taking like a problem and solution view of this topic. And so to collect data, our students shared the survey with their two schools with the help of their principals and passed out QR codes to increase the number of responses. They had 22 students total respond to their survey. Their recommendations ended up being to increase the quality and amount of food that is provided, to allow students to vote on school breakfast and lunch. Schools should conduct checkups to see if schools are up to date with lunch requirements, to have more kitchen staff available, to have student-oriented panels about new meals to be introduced, and to get rid of most processed foods that students tend to throw out. And then recommendations for future research are also provided on page 22 of the full annual report, which you will receive. And I also had the joy of working with the school nurses group, which were a bunch of lovely ladies from Banneker. And the main questions that they asked through their research were, what level of access do students have to school nurses at their school? What are the students' overall experiences with school nurse access? And then what recommendations do they have to make their experiences with the school nurses overall better? And so to collect that data, the students shared a survey with Banneker students. And we were very careful about questions that involved private information or retelling of situations that occurred so that we would not get any personal details that were not appropriate to ask in a survey. And we received 109 responses, which is incredible. And then the recommendations that came out of that survey and the analysis of it were that schools should do a better job of informing students of the health services at the school, especially when students are new to the school or transitioning from middle to high school. And then given that most resources are mainly from Banneker students, our students thought that a wider study should be done on students' access to and experience with their school's health services and access to nurses. And the third one was that every school should have a licensed nurse trained not just in medicine, but also in ensuring kindness and care of students. So having done a little bit more work with social emotional learning. So our next steps moving forward from the annual report is that internally within the SBOE, we are going to disperse these individual research groups to the ad hoc committees to review the recommendations that are relevant to their work, and really hope you all consider those, since we won't be here, really hope you all consider those, take them with a lot of weight, because our students worked very hard in the SAC on them, and they really come from a place of doing honest research and taking the wheel on that. And then our predecessors, the predecessors, no, we are the predecessors. Okay. The new student representatives will receive a copy of these during the August orientation. So hopefully we'll be able to pass the baton to them. And then externally, we'd like to share digital copies of the annual report with education agencies, organizations, and high school principals to further promote and drive SAC applications and signups, so that people will be interested when they see the awesome work that we do. So thank you all so much for the time and energy that you've poured into the SAC and into us as student representatives. And we hope we've made you proud with our annual report. And thank you, Mr. Darren.
Doctor. All right. Are there any questions?
Mr. Dr. Darren Fleischer.
Go by many names.
Are there any questions about the SAC annual report? Representative Goulet?
So I get two quick questions. So on the school safety area, were there any specific incidents that created concern about staff needing to go through metal detectors too, or was it more a feeling of just that if the students are having to do it, the staff should as well?
That's a great question. I would say there wasn't necessarily a concern regarding staff when it came to metal detectors. I think most of the metal detector conversation surrounded a lot of people either weren't aware that some schools in DC had to go through metal detectors, or the location of metal detectors, the efficiency of the process of going through metal detectors, not necessarily the staff members also having to go through that, but then just having to make that process seamless for everyone involved.
Okay, fantastic. And then just more of a comment on the last point. I mean, this is exciting research with the school meals and the school nurses, because it kind of reinforces and then advances things the board has already approved. Like in the Green New Deal for schools, we tried to push as part of that for healthier meals. And then obviously with the school nurses, this board, and a number of witnesses have made the point that we need a licensed nurse in every school. Are the students from either of these groups, are they all graduating, or are any of them coming back? Do you know?
I think that's a Perry question, since she worked directly with them.
Perry, I don't expect you to know off the top of your head, but
The kids that worked on school meals will be seniors next year, I believe. And if that's not true, I would.
No, that is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fleischer could, yeah.
we can get in touch
I
with
could
Dr.
follow up.
Fleischer.
I'm right on that.
I mean, this I think gives more energy to those recommendations, and I think it's really great work on the whole report, but I'm specifically focusing on these because I think we can then make another push on these based on what the students have researched here. So congrats to all you guys.
Thank you.
Representative Williams?
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is great work, so thank you all for these recommendations. I think a couple of them dovetail really nicely with the graduation requirements. So particularly like the scale up approach to college and career preparation, and just like incorporating that process more broadly across teacher training. I wanted to touch base on the mental health component. It said, so in terms of the referral process or in terms of just like increasing students' trust, like recommendations 2 and 3, or even a preventative approach, like what do you think while you're still here, like what does that concretely look like to be able to like destigmatize mental health in the high school level, but also to like make it more accessible for students?
For sure. So I think a lot of the perceived barriers that we were discussing for many months about the difference between the ones that were physical and ones that were perceived were in like a lack of clarity and information that students had versus what was technically reported that like DC says that students have available to them. So a lot of students were unaware of the referral process in the first place. And I think just concretely having dedicated mental health curricula that is like beginning in freshman year and like ends in your senior year, that is throughout, as opposed to just like one-off instances, maybe like one time in your freshman year, would definitely make it a lot easier because the clarity and transparency in the process and in what students have available to them at their school is really what kind of dismantles those attitudinal barriers. But I think another thing that people were definitely speaking about in our group in terms of like students' trust, like as to recommendation 3, was having dedicated mental health professionals that stay longer term. Right. A lot of students, including myself, were mentioning how we've had counselors and psychologists in and out for years, like they never stay for more than a year, if not a couple months at a time. And that definitely wrecks students' trust in the services that they have available at their school because it's never consistent. And I think incentivizing mental health professionals to stay at schools longer term so that they can actually develop relationships with students, like longitudinally speaking, would definitely help increase students' trust in what they have available.
Yeah, I've seen that and am very concerned like with where we are as a city potentially with the shift for the current TBH pilot. But then also just want while the 3 of you are here, I know you're not like the entire SAC, but is there a model then in terms of a way that your school communicates information that is like useful for accessing it? Like, you know, because I've seen a lot of schools will have like a QR code in the hallways, or is there a newsletter, or like what form, or like form meaning mode, not like actual physical form, like is best that you see to reach students so that they know where to get the resources? And have you seen something good at Banneker Basis or School Without Walls, or is it something that we still need to explore?
I would definitely say that it's something we still need to explore. I know Banneker reaches out to its students a lot through the Banneker Hub, but then again, having students constantly check that is a hassle in itself. I will say, mirroring what Satara was saying, I think that there is a lapse of trust because Banneker particularly has a counselor every 2 years and then it switches over. So you don't carry through your high school experience with the person. And I would say that's a model not to follow. And so I think just creating those relationships, establishing them earlier on, but making sure that they like continue throughout your high school journey would be the model. But a specific platform, I cannot say that Banneker has one that I would recommend.
Yeah, I concur. I think that I can't really speak to a specific mode of communication that I've found has been effective, at least in my high school experience, because I think most of the communication comes across through, we call it like, it's called Parent Square, but it happens like, it goes to parents. Like the students never see any of it.
Yeah.
And I'm always asking my mom to like look into her email so that she can tell me like what's going on, because it's not student facing. And I think that's definitely part of the issue. Like if students had a platform in order to like see the services that they have available at their school, that would make things a lot easier. And I think another thing is that through the mental health curricula specifically that I experienced a couple times within high school, it was always like through a third party source, like a third party like educational agency or group that has dedicated curricula. And while that was helpful, I feel like it wasn't, since it was a really a one-off instance, it was like we were consuming third party material that wasn't actually integrated into the curricula within our school. So even though the lessons themselves were fine, I never saw them again after that. So I think making sure that whatever curricula is being used is consistent and has like resources that are available like for longer than just like the 1 week in which you have that lesson would make things a lot easier and more consistent across a longer period of time.
Yeah, thank you, bud.
You guys did an inventory too, right?
Yes, we did. Do you want me to
Yeah, if
speak
you want
about
to
the
share that.
inventory? Okay.
That was fascinating.
Yeah, so we also within the mental health group specifically, like I was mentioning earlier, we did this inventory of what resources were available rather what DC said students had available to them. And it said that DC high school students have access to like 20 unique resources, which included like school-based resources as well as like screened school-based resources to which students must be referred to in the referral process, and also curricula and a virtual like phone resource that is available 24 hours a day. And it said that the resources should cover a variety of topics, but within the separate survey that we gave out to students, mentioned a specific lack in resources in 2 categories, which were human trafficking and eating disorders. So even though DC says that we should have curricula about a variety of topics, there were 2 very clear categories that were significantly underlooked, or overlooked rather. And the other thing that we found was that DC said that we had access to referral programs, but the slots were very limited and students were significantly unaware that the referral process was even something that they were able to access. And that's kind of what we found surveying what we had publicly available to us.
It's independent.
I have 3 questions. One, when you're talking about mental health curricula, is that aligned with social emotional learning standards, or is that the same?
I think
Or
there
is it
is,
different?
I think there's significant overlap for sure, because I think like communication and emotional regulation, how we interact with your peers is definitely part of SEL, but also part of mental health curricula. But I think there is certainly topics that are covered within broader mental health curricula that are not necessarily included within SEL. But I think the overlap is definitely an important area to look into, and I think it like dovetails nicely into what we're talking about with mental health.
Thanks. Do you recommend or hope for your successors to have the same experience that you had at the research collaborative? Do you suggest that they do it again? I don't know if it's already decided if they're gonna do it again or not.
I would say so. I think that we had a very pleasant experience with the research collaborative. I think that they really helped with the data analysis, but not only data analysis, coming up and like creating research questions that were to the point, but also could touch like a wide variety. Having these groups like mental health and student safety, there are so many different things that you can talk about. And I think that the education research collaborative was like imperative to like helping us condense all of the work and creating a time frame. So I would say that I hope that they do use the education research collaborative, and I think that we had a pretty
Is
impressive.
there anything you would change?
Honestly, I think it was a really great experience, because I think the youth participatory action research framework was really helpful to make it feel as though like I said before, we were in the driver's seat. It wasn't just a bunch of adults like telling us what to do and we went and did it. It was actually more like we were telling them what to do. We were like, these are the questions we want to research. This is what we're interested in. This is what we have observed in our own schools. Now let's like actually tackle it and see how we can talk to our peers and reach a wide array of people with all of these research questions. I think like start like initially, maybe at the beginning of the year, establishing that relationship was kind of crucial. There was definitely like conversations had about like what everyone's role was in each process. But I think once we found that, and it didn't even take that long, take maybe a month at most, since we got to meet with them every single month for like an hour at least, dedicated amount of time, it really helped us like come to a really good agreement, and we got a lot done. So I really hope next year we're able to use that again.
Great. Last quick question. Is there something replicable about your experience with Friendship Tech that like got their response rate so high? Is there just a particular contact that you had there, or did they use some incentive, or did they make it easy for students to fill it out? We do surveys a lot and we struggle to get.
That's a really good question. I cannot say that I know the answer to the question. I think that based off of the surveys, I do know a lot of people like really went around the school and asked like their friends and their peers in their classes and their advisories to like respond to the survey. Other than, I think Mary has something to say.
That's so humiliating to do. I think that one of the big things was kind of that Darren / Dr. Fleischer / Dr. Darren, Mr. Darren, yeah. Something that he did help us do was to plan out the surveys in a way where we were kind of looking at it from the person taking the survey's perspective. So if we come across a survey and we're rushing out of school and we did a QR code and the first question is explain blank and it's a text box, we're not realistically going to do that. So we tried to set up the surveys in a way that we could see it being like the questions were impartial, and they were relatively easy to select an answer for. And if we needed further explanation, we could ask for it, but that gave us good like numbers and basic data that we could use to kind of look at. And then, yeah, you had a few tricks that you used, Dr. Fleischer, that I really like.
And I would also say, they gotta do their peers, they didn't hear from the principal or the teacher trying to do it, or asking them to do it. They tend to respect their peers more.
I'll also add, and this wasn't me, this was the students, but the school meals team went during lunch and asked, like they went to the appropriate, like there was like an extracurricular one too. They were also like, depending on what the theme of the survey was, they would use that theme to then find the students to give those responses. So sometimes the students have the answers of just like, how do you
Say it loud.
dispense those?
Yeah, I will, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I will add, I think something to note in the future was that we did have a timeline going forward about so in the beginning of the year, we came up with a research question, then we came up with, like we surveyed the landscape as to what answers already existed, and then we tried to fill in the gaps with surveys and interviews. But I think because of that timeline, a lot of the surveying process was kind of in the April-May territory, and that is more difficult to get students' responses with, especially with like AP exams and finals and all of that. And I think that's definitely like a barrier we had to like survey respondents as well as getting participants for interviews, which I know our group specifically struggled with.
Shane.
Great. I'd be very open to taking a meeting at a school lunch time at some point. I'm interested in the some of the anecdotes and experiences that you learn from students that might not be captured in the recommendations. So I'm curious what some of the, I think what I'm always trying to find are also the existing services, programs, people that people cited as like, this worked. And we should do more of this from the people who have been using the resource, either someone to navigate the resources that helped, or a resource that helped, or I think you get what I'm saying. Did anything come up that in the surveys or the conversations you had that could add some color into what is working?
I would say initially having conversations with the students, I think what I saw first was the overlap between the different groups, like hearing from the student safety group and hearing how like the absence of teachers or the lack of proper protocol with addressing how to like handle teacher instances then leads to the students feeling like unprepared for college and career readiness, and then also trickles over to mental health. I think hearing about how those implications of like safety can like trickle down to other sectors was the most like eye-opening piece to me. I don't think that it's not really optimistic. It's but it was important to like understanding how like policies in each sector will have like drastic impacts on the next. I'm not sure if, I mean, hearing about these issues, I think that like putting any step forward to creating like tangible resolutions and like solutions to the problems will then have benefits in all sectors. But like the conversations that I had just told me or like reaffirmed my belief that like there needs to be like adjustments within at least student safety and college and career readiness and mental health resources, etc.
Yeah, for sure. I think I definitely agree with that overlap piece, right? I will say in terms of like positive things, I feel like the point of our research was to identify the gaps. So a lot of the anecdotes I got and experienced were not necessarily positive. But I will say we did conduct like one like virtual interview as well. And we got some positive feedback from that, as well as from like some of our survey participants and the more open-ended questions. And while there were significant, like I think over like 50% of students mentioned that they felt they were able to access mental health support from like peers, they also mentioned some trusted adults, specifically teachers. I think we have a quote from one of the survey participants, like in the actual appendix, which I really liked, which talked about how like this student has teachers who really have supported them and they were able to really open up to their teachers. And I think that really speaks to the importance of like having trusted relationships with adults in schools, so that like even if students aren't receiving like actual like counseling support or aren't being referred to places, they still have people they can talk to. And that was something that I think was more positive.
Good. Okay. Were there any other questions?
I have a
Question to Dawson.
So we are what, a few weeks away, past tense, from the student summit we had with Make the Challenge. One of the things that, they asked us to do was make certain commitments, and other decision makers to make certain commitments. I'm curious if there are things, that you specifically think are for the state board to do. Some of these things are for schools to do or for other providers to do. I know Representative Henderson asked the question around like the standards overlap when it comes to mental health, but giving you all our student representatives, for the state board and thinking about, not just your successors, but us as your, adults, colleagues, are there specific things that, come to mind that you would like to see us as a board, or you feel, we are best positioned to do?
I think this was not my group, so I have less to specifically say about this, but I think some of the biggest recommendations that can be concretely enacted like by the state board would be in the college and career readiness group. And I think like Representative Henderson mentioned, there's a lot of it that overlaps with the graduation requirements work, specifically the having like ongoing a scaling up approach to college and career readiness especially. But yeah, you could read more about that. I have less to say about that, but I think it's specifically in terms of mental health. I think having some sort of resolution that sort of goes about having concrete mental health curricula that is like required to be like a longitudinal approach throughout high school would be very important, because a lot of students were mentioning that if they do get support that is like lesson plans or things that all students have to complete, it is a one-off instance in one of their years of high school and then never brought up again. And then when it comes time to be like an upperclassman, they receive barely any support. So I think something that would ensure that students get support throughout their high school time would be very important.
I would say, in the student safety group, I think it's just difficult because there were so many different aspects to student safety that people had concerns about, and it's hard to like maintain a balance of like things that students will appreciate with things that are for student safety. I think in regarding drills and how to facilitate drills, I think clear language about like how each school should respond to like varying circumstances is important. I think that with that comes the communication aspect of how teachers are trained to handle these situations, but also how students respond to them, and how that communication aspect of students just not understanding the severity of the situation. I don't know per se if that's something that like the state board can like, because the communication aspect is internal, like it varies but between different schools too. I know a lot of students were talking about like the way that they approach fire drills and lockdown drills and how other students approached it differently. I don't know how to like how to express it as like the uniform circumstance if schools still follow the rules but approach them differently. I think just clearer language about the policies, but also like allowing the communication aspect to like take its stance is important, if that makes sense.
Any other questions? Thank you guys again.
Yeah.
On May 13th, the state board was proud to co-host the Civic Leadership Summit with the Challenge DC, also the student advocate and Ed Trust. I will now turn to Andrew, who what's the staff date on the event and facilitate a discussion on it?
Yeah, so first of all, just like want to lead off with a huge thank you to all of the members who came out a few weeks ago. I think we had 7 out of 9, so that was a really good turnout. We were really happy with that. So just by the numbers, we had about 75 students in total attend. We had over 100 register, so we pulled some pretty good numbers with that. Had over 40 civic partners from, various community organizations who were there. And 17 individual decision makers participated from OSSE, DME, DCPS, the Department of Public Safety and Justice, Department of Transportation, Public Charter School Board, and of course, you guys. And everybody broke out into groups that covered issues like literacy, mental health, police community relations, safe spaces, school staff and student relations, student voice and decision-making, youth employment. We had a very robust discussion with MICVA a week after the event and also talked about it internally, our team. Our assessment was we think that the event was a big success whenever you're measuring it as a means of garnering civic engagement from young people. We did have a little bit of a discussion about the success being a little less clear when measured against the original intent, which was to spearhead concrete policy actions similar to safe passage, or against the 2026 SBOE priorities. But we can work and iron out some of the kinks. Our recommendation for that was maybe vision mapping and concepting and doing some preliminary planning internally before we go out and recruit external partners. But overall, it was a lively event that we think we can build on in the future. Again, we did have that debrief call with MICVA a week after the event, and we agreed to do it again next year. And we agreed to do it again next year. We're going to start planning in the fall. So we're going to have a much more robust program developed out next year. Just as a reminder, I put up here on the screen some of the commitments that decision makers made. Brandon, I think in your comments, you said that we were going to work with OSSE to advocate for the literacy innovation recommendations. Ebony Rose, I think that you said we were going to work with the Office of Student Advocate and DME to advance student recommendations around officer training and interaction with young people. Representative Johnson Law had a few commitments connecting with DCPS to raise student voice about school culture, best practices for interactions between teacher, staff, and students, helping students navigate complaint processes, and learning what resources DCPS already has in place. Representative Goulet mentioned getting a resolution drafted on the mental health support recommendations. And Representative Colson wanted to focus on communicating information about internships to young people earlier. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments, or questions?
Well, I think it was a huge success, and I want to thank you, all the staff here, and then Brandon as well, and the C committee for really getting this going and making it a huge success. I think overall it was fantastic, and I think what you just mentioned there gives us a lot to do. So in terms of empowering student voice, which is one of the goals that was right in the strategic plan, I think we can check off part A of that, and now it's about trying to put some of those recommendations into place for the fall, which is part B. And I think there's a lot to we really had student safety and supports, like the mental health issue, I think is important. Like the SRO discussion they had was particularly interesting, I thought. So when you look at all of those things, I think we have a lot to work with, and I would give the event like an A+. I think the turnout was exceptional. I think the recommendations we got were really good. And I thought the students just had like tremendous ideas, things that we hadn't even thought of. So I don't think that's a bad thing. They kind of went in a different direction than what we were thinking it was going to go in, because we got what we wanted, which was hearing directly from the students and getting fresh new ideas from them. So I think huge success, just thanks to everybody who pulled it off.
Yeah, I think it was a really good event.
Other comments? Representative Boyd.
I guess, so then in terms of our lane versus like, do we need to do any additional like coordination with like MICFA or OSSI or any of the other stakeholders to kind of help follow up, given like our role in like the convening aspect? Cause I know that at the end, there were a lot of people who kind of made different commitments, and I'm just curious kind of how we keep the glue of keeping people together to,
So as a part of the debrief, which all the people who are actively involved in the anyway, we separated our responsibilities for follow-up. So for the 17 decision makers that SBOE was responsible for inviting and gathering, we will be sending out thank you notes to them with Vancia CC, which has their commitment in it, and then Vancia and the Make the Challenge team will follow up with connecting them with students to finish that work. And then like Vancia will reach out to the 40 civic partners. They are not necessarily government. Some are government, some are not. Like one of them was Girl Scouts. So, and other folks who came through and to follow up with them, if they make it better. And the same last weekend, one, when we did our debrief, again, we committed to participating again in FY27, which is split between school years and fiscal years. But we're starting this planning in September so that it's already on. I think one of the biggest things reflected back at the team, that by the time this got to our SAC, they were already elbow deep in their own research and their own priorities and their own things. And that was too late to try to incorporate them because they already had a body of work that they were moving full speed ahead on that was already separate from this. And so oftentimes the team would ask, oh, where are the SAC members? And they'll be at their own meeting, obviously, but they already had a body of work that they were moving that they just presented. And so we've already started to think about how we incorporate this at the very first SAC meeting in September, so that they become a part of the planning process with the MICFA students at the same time. And so instead of trying to pull people in, we are incorporating students together. And also we talked about, is there an opportunity between the SAC and the other MICFA students to do like sort of a fall mixer? So like civically engaged youth, they just get them together so they know each other. Because there were not a lot of overlap, surprisingly. There was some. Obviously, Perry was a Make the Challenge, for example, before she got on this portion of the student rep. But there aren't a ton of those. And so we brainstormed, so like, how do we ingrain it more so that the recommendations that our SAC members are working on align with this work, and it's not like two separate strands of youth recommendations that don't necessarily connect, but it's more of a multiplied effort and impact. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
no, it does. I mean, and I know because also they have, since we passed the action civic standards for 8th grade, like, you know, their programming has grown immensely. So I think both at the later stages of middle school and at high school level. So they have a variety of different voice councils, both for TCPS and for the charters, like for the whole city. And so I think that's really strategic. So then is based on where the debrief is now, is there, are we considering doing this again next year, or we are?
But the agency's already committed, so the planning will start in September.
Great, awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Other comments? Representative Goff.
Okay, so I am so first of all, bit of rainfall, getting over really bad cold. So if it comes out not perfect, it's baking. So when I was listening to the student advisory committee recommendations, I immediately thought, okay, so we have some overlap in the topics of the commitments from the MICFA event. I think the thing that I would like to be clearer on is for, now that we have these two sets of recommendations and commitments, and maybe this is what we're supposed to get out of the brief today, but what are our follow-up next steps, for realizing those and for charting those to our overall, like, working priorities? So like, I know that, Director Butler mentioned that as you all transition, your recommendations, will still be presented to like the council. And I hear that the staff is gonna do some follow-up with like planning for next year, as well as the coordinating with agencies. I am not sure what I am supposed to do as a board member and with whom regarding the commit. Now, granted, I personally am interested in the
Okay.
things that,
Thank you.
don't hear me out. I am personally interested in the things that I said, but to be clear, we just split up the report out, like we kind of, we went into our little huddles together and we said, oh yeah, as a board, like these things make sense. But they were always envisioned as board commitments. And so I do want us to keep that in front of mind as we plan for board work, instead of like Ebony Rose going off by herself. You know what I mean?
That is helpful. to
That is
know.
a different charge.
Yeah, I think that's helpful to know, because that is not how the NICFA recorded them. They recorded each commitment by individual.
Oh, I know.
And so for us, I think deciding what to do with the board's commitment is what the debrief is about. You want to decide a course of action. Like looking at these things, what do you want to prioritize? Do you want to assign some of these things to committee? Like that is a part of the debrief for this particular event right now. And I do want to say in terms of like, I think what you will notice, while the recommendations may overlap in topic, that the actual recommendations themselves do not.
Yes, that is what I'm.
And I think that because we didn't have a huge number. So one, I think this lets you know what are important to students in general across the city.
Mhm.
Even though the recommendation may be different, they're all thinking about mental health. They are thinking about college and career readiness, like those type of things. So the Make the Challenge students have already, they are committed to like, they're refining and working on these over the next school year. So they don't plan on necessarily changing their recommendations, but there's workshops with their students over the summer to refine them, to prepare them, and then they have a work plan that's built out through next school year, where they'll be pushing out their recommendations. And one of the main points of the small groups at the event was to get feedback from partners. So, okay, have you considered this? Maybe tighten up this part, because there's a part in there about the state board paying for literacy tutors. The state board, I don't know how that's a reality for us to like actually just knowing the budget that we have and our staff capacity, like that's a whole, I mean, I'm sure we get a pop-up grant somewhere to get literacy tutors, but that then requires the agency and the board to make commitments, and then also, but that's not normally what we operate. So it's just really deciding what part, like, you all want to take that work on, do you want to add it to the work plan, and how much of this do you want to add, considering that this iteration of the board will no longer exist after December 31st. So I think it's a lot of things to hold, that the board has to honestly consider and think about. Because are you all gonna make commitments to see these things through on behalf of whoever comes in January? And so are there commitments that you all are willing to make around executing the set of things that you all set between now and December 31st? And the staff can help with those. So like some of these things, like get a resolution drafted around mental health support. That falls in line with the C committee already doing some work on that already. But if you wanna work on this literacy innovation recommendation, you all have to decide, how do we take that to OSCE? Like, what are the next steps? Is that on the leadership agenda? Do you wanna have staff put together a research, like you have to decide the what that you wanna move forward with next. You wanna assign that to a committee so that it can be built out as a part of a work plan.
I mean, what I think would be helpful in this would be is if we could get kind of, I think we have it just two different places right now, but there's a lot of crossover. We could just get like a one pager with the specific recommendations. And then, you know, we could potentially get those then like referred to committee. And the committee may, you know, get together and decide because there's no actions needed, like the one with the budget request, like for instance, that could be the board deciding to put it in the budget letter, or something like that. I mean, we shouldn't be spending our time applying for grants or something, but that's something that we really think is a priority. We can put it in the ask that we sent to the mayor, next year. And other things I think the committees could take up, like the mental health supports, we have crossover both ways. And I think that's good timing on that because there's a debate going on right now about whether there should be those should be CBOs, whether they should be staffed at DBH. So like that's something that really is right. So we could look at that in committee and be part of that discussion. So I think if we can get the issues referred to the committee, what the committee chairs do.
Yeah, I have Andrew's hand up.
Yeah, just on recommendations that the students gave during the event, just a little bit of an update on that too. You know, like whenever you came to the event, there were recommendations around the room that were already kind of like predetermined. And then in your breakout groups, you kind of like talked, like exchanged with students and like started to work on refining those recommendations. At the very end, the students did kind of give a little bit of an update on those recommendations that they wanted to make. We're still waiting to get like those refined recommendations back from MCBA. So that's why they're not in this debrief kind of summary right here, but we are working to get those and we will share them with you in a like 20-page format as soon as we get it ready to do.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's really helpful because like, for instance, my working group on mental health that we had, there was a good discussion and a good start, but there was some real concerns that needed to be looked at. Like they wanted to have peer-to-peer mental health counseling, but there wasn't really an analysis of whether the students were ready to do that with some of the profound issues that other students have, how that would be treated with HIPAA, how they would be trained on disclosure of mandatory reporting. Like there was a whole host of things that were really serious concerns. So they were going to take that back and take a further look at it. And I think that that's helpful because then we kind of can maybe get it to a place we can work with.
Yeah, we have the very original recommendations. We just don't have those ones that were kind of a little bit more refined into the event.
And with the SAC recommendations, so the goal, well, one is to begin to share those out with their annual report. So we are having 2 MCBA Challenge fellows who are students. And will be setting up meetings with them to go meet with council members to share out the SAC report itself and those recommendations so that they are aware of them. And so we're excited about that, but that is just getting the word out, but that doesn't stop the committees from doing work around these, because I think they can't just sit there and report on the website like we've done in past years. And so we're trying to look at a different strategy on how to get, particularly because so much student-led research went into the recommendation. We thought that one, it would be a great project for our Make the Challenge student to then have get them to practice presenting to elected officials and gathering the feedback. And then as a part of their end of summer project, like how do they see maybe the linking of the two or something like that? As a bridging project that they have to present out at the end of the summer to their own peers about the work that they've done. And so we're really thinking about how do we give this legs beyond just the printed report itself. Because even when we met with Chairman Williamson, and I shared with him that we had student research happening, that students developed the questions with obviously Dara Shar and her team, and they used but they created the questions, and they created the surveys, they got the word out, and they were able to get a much more huge response than adults, because there were students seeking responses from other students around questions and answers that they wanted to know, and not with the adults that they wanted to know. And so he's like, really? They responded? I'm like, yes, they did respond. So he is already looking forward to even seeing what those recommendations and the research itself was. And so we want to make sure that we share that out so other people know that one, this is great work that is happening. And as our SSC continues to grow, because we email like we do every year, every high school runs to get the application out. And we told them we want one person from every single high school. Like that is our goal. And it doesn't have to be your school valedictorian. Every student is welcome. I mean, you must be a sophomore or above, but other than that.
Look to see if there's any more comments.
Did that answer your question, Representative?
I think, yes, yes, it does, but it also sounds like, which I suspected that, there are questions we have to answer, so, because the way this was framed, it was framed as like, we should, any comments on the event. But there is another conversation, and I don't know if that's supposed to happen now, or if we, need to wait until, the updated recommendations come back to us about what what all of the work is that is to come out of this and how it, and what we will do to actually fulfill our commitments. Because yes, I think we all, enjoyed the event and saw success in the event. But I also know that the goal, was to actually follow through on the things that the young people said to us.
So we will, plan to follow up on this discussion at the July working session. Hopefully by that time, we'll have to refine recommendations from the Make the Challenge team, and that we can communicate that out to you all, obviously before this meeting. So that you will have an opportunity to look over them and be prepared to have a fuller discussion on the action steps at the July working session.
That would be perfect.
Thank you. And thank you, Andrew, and team, for all of your work.
So,
Thank you. Thank you, Director. The next item on our agenda is to the debrief of the May public meeting panel on the topic of physical education standards. Members, you have in your materials a summary document with key highlights from the panel. Are there any additional questions, comments, or discussion items based on the panel discussion? See some I cares no, and Eric Boulay,
I'm just,
Representative Boulay seems as if he just
I'm,
needs to.
no, I'm just a sign on this because, I mean, what I would love to be able to see with this still is that, you know, we're not shifting it in a direction where we could just have some sort of equivalency and be able to get competency-based credit for varsity sports. I feel like this is slightly nudging us away from being able to do that, which is my goal, to try to create more space in people's schedules to be able to have more elective credits. And we're going back a half credit in the graduation requirements. I mean, this seems like we're kind of drifting a little bit away from making it easier to get competency-based credit for varsity athletics. But I'm not going to die on this hill. I don't really care, so can I vote present on these?
That is your choice. I have no say.
Okay, but we are allowed to vote present.
Okay.
There's not a vote here.
I don't know.
I know we've had some good conversations about that. Are there other comments after Representative Boulay statement?
I mean, I think I will. It is just a panel. I also, I hear, Representative Boulay and his, desire for flexibility. I am not sure, that the hill to die on is around varsity sports. I will say that, I would have liked to attend yesterday, but was not able to. Elliott Hunt and Deal, were in the championships, for baseball. And I was reminded that it feels like Deal wins everything. Because they have so many students and so many sports. And so when we think about, just equitable, distribution of opportunity, I do get concerned, when we start to rely on things like extracurricular activities. But I do think flexibility is important. And that's one of the reasons, some of the conversations for me around, course equivalency and what we offer in schools is most important. Both so we can have more advanced opportunities, and to make sure students have things that they are interested in. But I do feel, one of the things that I thought, switching, back to, um, what is in front of us, but one of the things that I thought was affirming, was, the need to clarify between health and physical education. Because I know that was a question. I don't think we just have requirements for the sake of requirements. And one of the things we heard from young people in particular was that they did not feel they were getting enough around health education, in different aspects like that. Before we even started engaging in the graduation requirements, and I think Representative Beth invited us to come to something with NICFA, and it's a young lady whose soapbox speech, was actually around, not specifically sex education, but health education, and what she needed to know about her own body. And so I think those things are, affirming and helpful. And it's always great to see, one of our past teachers of the year. I don't think he sent us the selfie, but I would love to see it. But I thought it was a helpful start, and look forward, to what I'll see since down, no matter how Representative Boulay chooses to vote. Even though we haven't seen a single requirement yet, I mean, a single standard yet, but, you know.
We both on everything.
I don't want to be negative.
We've had that conversation, I know, so.
Let's just not live things more than once, right? We're not there yet. That's what I tell people for everything.
Are there other comments? Discussion?
I think the panel did a great job of highlighting how the new standards particularly, have been altered to make sure they account for adaptive PE for students with special needs. And so I think that was a really in-depth explanation. And it just showed like how across the board in education in general, the needs of students, with disabilities is top of mind. To making sure they have an equitable education experience. So I'm glad we're able to include the adaptive PE, instructor from Fairfax County.
Thank you. That was very good. Looking all the way down, just to make sure. Stevie hands. Okay. Thank you for the discussion. Members, last week you received an email from Vice President Goulet proposing that we postpone the June panel on virtual learning to a later date. At this time, before we discuss the future panel, I would like to discuss and vote on this matter. Representative Goulet.
Yeah, I'll speak to this real quickly. I did have a great conversation with Representative Johnson Hall about this. I mean, our challenge right now is that this panel would really benefit from having the virtual technology, because then we can get experts from other jurisdictions to be able to weigh in on what really are the best practices for a situation where, you know, the students can't attend class for a period of time because of snow or whatever. And Representative Johnson Law agreed to postpone this. Hopefully, once the technology gets up, we'll be able to bring this back in the fall at some point to be able to have it before we have, you know, the potential snow incident again that causes a lengthy outage of school. So that was the plan. So that, with that said, I'd like to move a motion to, I guess, strike the panel. We're not replacing it, but just strike the panel that we previously approved for June.
So if you're postponing it, that's totally.
Well, but I can't postpone to a date certain. Because we don't have such a date yet. I mean, I think we were thinking like probably September, October
I
possibly,
received that.
but
Okay.
I mean, when do we need to decide on the September panel?
At the July public meeting. Yeah,
The
working
July
session.
working session.
July.
So we don't need to do it right now. Okay, so then I will just move to strike it.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded. It was seconded by Representative Best. Okay.
Are you gonna call for it?
Motion has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Okay, I see any more discussion. The motion is postponed or strike, the June public meeting panel on virtual learning. I'll ask for the yeas and the nays. All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, guys. All right, we will now move to our public meeting panel discussion for August. We do have a public meeting in July, so this evening we will discuss potential topics for the month of August. Okay. There's currently one topic in the tracker from Representative Henderson. Screen time in schools and tech. Are there any additions from members for the August meeting before we discuss this one? I don't see any others. Okay, so let's hear from, Representative Henderson.
All right, thank you. So, I actually put this in the tracker before, our last meeting, but now, more so it seems that we need to, take this up. What I would envision is, a panel that helps us take in the fuller education landscape. Like, we heard a lot at the last meeting, but I think it was almost exclusively, if not exclusively, TCPS, probably concentrated geographically as well. So I think a panel that kind of broadens the view on the issue to consider both policy and implementation, look at how things are working out. On the ground, we got some parent via the parents' student perspective. But I think we would also want to hear more from LEA leaders and from teacher perspectives. My personal hope is that we can have a discussion that's about what tech, when tech, and how much tech, rather than just for or against. And that's my hope, that we could have that kind of discussion.
Are there comments around the proposal? Representative Goulet?
I just second this 1000%. I think this was the right questions to ask. I think the panel is timely and it's going to be a really good discussion. I think the one thing we just got to make sure we do is have the virtual capacity back, because I think we will really benefit from being able to get other jurisdictions speaking on this. So that's the only caveat that I have with supporting an August panel. Is just hopefully we'll have the technology back. But, but I was going to say, do you think that that's realistic for?
I'm sorry.
And then I'm not asking you to excited.
You gonna ask me something else? I can't 100% certainly say what is realistic when we're talking about OPCO and TS together.
Fair.
That's history there.
Okay.
Okay.
But we can
Okay.
always change
Well,
it
we
if we
don't
need
get
to.
money until July.
Yeah, but there are ways around that.
I'm just noting. we don't
Yeah,
get
that's the
money
thing,
Until
so-
July.
But I think one of the things, so it could be possible. So again, we've already started the dialogue now. We will have an update before the end of June, to say the least. But I also wonder if this panel, at what point, or is this another topic where we talk about the sort of the data infrastructure, security of student data? I feel like that's a different topic than screen time. But that's not necessarily something that is directly related. I mean, it's tangentially related, it's a related topic, but the kids' data can be saved all day and there can still be problems with screen time, or vice versa. There can be no problem with screen time and the kids' data is unprotected. So I just don't know like where that part of the conversation comes in. Is that the sort of the data security procedures of student data for all LEAs? Because we know that DCPS is hooked into a larger infrastructure with the DC government, but do we know that about the kids at every single charter LEA and how their data is or is not protected or is not shared? And they don't have the same contracting agreements and rules and requirements that the DC government has. And so how are we ensuring across every sector in LEA again?
Well, and I would just add and remind members that, like, especially with a topic like ed tech, that so many things fall underneath it. You could, yes, have an expert panel, public meeting, but you also have committee meetings or roundtables or other avenues to do this type of learning. And something like a roundtable or inviting people to your committee meeting gives you more dedicated time with people if you want to dive deeper into a specific piece of ed tech.
Go right ahead, sir.
Oh,
Go right ahead.
I do think that,
you know, those are all very important things. But if we're talking like a panel, that could be separated. I do think age appropriate screen time is one, data, and security is another, and appropriate ed tech tools. Is also another one, that's like, could be our top three, going into the, new year. But I do want to make sure that we are, that I'm agreeing with you, as far as I think we should have a panel on the age appropriate screen time. We have seen a lot of movement on that, and I would like to make sure that we are getting on both sides of the story so that we can make appropriate decisions to move forward. And so I would just like to say that I second that topic.
Get to that point too.
You say that again?
We're gonna get to that point. Representative Williams.
Yeah, I wanna echo that because I think that a couple of things, like one. This piece of the broader puzzle for education, technology, for younger students apparently is like. Has been moving across cities and states more recently, and then NASB is also focusing on it right now. Next Monday with their meeting, or maybe webinar, I'm not sure what term it is, but like, I think that's also the thing that's like most. Just like, it's easiest to come up with some guidelines initially, and we can start there and then see where it goes, but I think the age appropriateness, particularly at the younger grades, is the thing that I've been hearing most from parents and from the coalition that's forming these.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Any more discussion? Okay. Please, or, is there a motion to select, screen time in schools in tech for our August meeting?
It's laptop. Is it ed tech or is it grade time? Those are two different topics.
So it's, go right ahead.
Age appropriate screen time sounds fine.
Okay.
Usually.
She'll give it that time.
Yeah, we just want to make sure. But I don't want to say it's like, we said ed tech, and we want these people sort of clear.
I appreciate that. Okay, so the probably moved it seconded. I'll call for the yeas and nays, all in favor? Any nays? Ayes have it. Carried. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you so much. We now have our August topic for our panel. At this particular time, I'm going to give everyone a 5-minute break, just to stretch and take care of any other business that you may have. The current time is 6:31. Everyone will return at 6:36. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. It's four
I'll stay here
until. Okay,
I'll just
so,
Yeah.
we have four.
I might miss something.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
four. Thank everyone for coming back very promptly after our break. We will now move to committee reports. I will call on each committee in alphabetical order. And each chair or co-chair will share updates and answer any questions from members. We will start with administrative with Vice President Goulet.
So anyway, the last meeting, I think, was a huge success. We did a few things. One, we talked about the performance plan that we put together with KPIs. And Executive Director Butler went through, took the KPIs, which were good from OSA and Ombudsman. Substantively, they were good, but they needed to be in the same format. And she was able to get them in a uniform format. And that's now going to be submitted to the budget office, and it will appear in the budget book. So we will have what I think are the best KPIs in the city and on Chapman, which is really, I think, a real step forward, because we used to get questioned on why we didn't have any at all. And now we'll have the best. So that's good. The agency realignment plan is also very exciting, to me at least. I think what we're trying to do is make sure that the positions within the central office, ombudsman, and OSA are on similar grades for similar positions. We did something like this at DC Council for fiscal year 2008, and I think it was really helpful. It kind of synced everything up, and we really got a good start on it already, it sounded like. So I think by next month, we'll try to get this on in. The other thing that I don't see on this list here, but that I was excited about was the work you're doing on getting standard operating procedures for the agency. And we've done that for how the board operates. But I think having standard operating procedures, like on everything from, trying to get.
Should be on there for the
SBO. I'm kind of winging it.
Oh, okay. Update.
Okay, yeah. Okay, there you go. Yeah, there it is. And I mean, that was really, I thought that was really exciting and should be highlighted. I think that's everything that we had. You also gave an update on the timeline for the funding in the office, but we're still waiting to see when we put that together. But I think it would be great to get our hybrid capacity back. So I'll be glad to take questions on any of those issues.
All right, any questions? Administrative committee report. I'm not seeing any vice president. That's great report.
Well, and there's a lot of exciting things, to me at least.
All right, thank you, sir. College career and life readiness. I'm going to see Representative Henderson and Representative Thompson. I don't know which one is going to start or how we like to go.
Yeah.
This one's yours.
I didn't pull it up yet.
I got it.
Okay, yeah.
College career and life readiness, hosted Director Butler to talk about our KPIs, as I believe all the committees have now done, so you know how that goes. We gave our feedback. Representative Colson was not able to join us, so we're still have on our plate the attendance and grading policy discussion that she will bring to us. She's able. We did talk about educational and technology and screen time and talked about the panel that we have now adopted. We did an update. You all now know that the board has shared its high school graduation recommendations to Austin. And we debriefed on the task force and talked about how future work like it, any adjustments we recommend. So we convene a task force again in the future. This might be a place to look back to for some lessons learned. And finally, we talked about our ongoing work of doing site visits for feedback loops and things like learning standards. To discuss how we want to approach those visits, what kind of standard questions we might want to ask, how we want to be able to report that back out to the full board. So we've done a few visits already. We have visited River Terrace, we visited Coolidge High School. And planning a few more for this fall. And we discussed the fact that we would, the committee will take the lead on setting up those visits, but we would extend the invitations to other board members if they want to. We didn't have any official actions for it.
All right. Are there any questions? Director, go right ahead.
With the site visit, you said that you've already done two, those were around the standards.
Those were related to graduation requirements.
So for the ones that are for the standards, in addition to like creating a set of questions for feedback, is there a plan to really distribute those schools from DCPS and charter so that we could have, so like DCPS doing one thing in all of their high schools? Is it maybe a DCPS policy choice versus you have three different charters on the same standard, maybe doing three different things? Just wanted to make sure, are you guys thinking about being intentional in sort of the division of school?
I would say yes, we are being intentional. We have not mapped out all of the visits that we plan to do. We were thinking a goal of like 6 to 7 visits being realistic over the course of the academic school year. Yes, we are interested in variation on a number of axes, so not just sector, but age group.
Elementary.
Geography, yes.
Yeah.
Different things.
All sorts of things, and there's limitations in a sample size of 6 or 7, we can't hit all of them. So we have differences we might want to.
And we got to 6 or 7 based on volume, so we assumed that at most we could probably execute one school visit a month. With the knowledge that in real life, the school year is 8, maybe 9 months. And of those months, December is not a great month. In addition to the beginning of the school year and the end of the school year tend not to be times that are the best point in time samples of instruction. And so at most, we could probably do 6 to 7 visits over the course of school year. We, as always, and we actually have been asking, and thank you, KB, for starting the spreadsheet, but we are also taking recommendations. So it's not like, what tends to happen is not that Representative Henderson and I go into a document, make up stuff. We ask what, are there places that you all know of that are doing well for this as a committee? And then we'll also ask the board. So for example, we did the same thing with the graduation requirements when we had experts come. We said, hey, can folks recommend? So there will be also a larger feedback with the board around places that they would like to visit as well.
And so, because this was tied to the board set of strategic priorities that end on December 31st, is there any concern about what happens after December 31st, this iteration of the board? And sort of what happens, because the way the strategic priorities was built.
I would say, as I shared with Representative Boulay earlier in the meeting, I tend to live things once. I cannot know what the configuration of the board would be after January. So I don't think we should consider either optimistically or pessimistically what will happen. I do know that we will still have a responsibility to do standards overall. And so I would imagine that work would continue, but I think that's a conversation for the members at that time. And I think, yeah, so that's kind of how I look at it.
But there's No plans to close out the work by December and have them report out with the rest of the priorities in December.
I think we would still report out, but I don't think a report out. I think we are looking at this as an ongoing feedback. And so I think if this is something that, we should report out, we would expect that we would do as part of our committee reports. I took a stab at a draft, report out, like written report, from the River Terrace visit, which I'll share with members and would love to get feedback on. But I think we have the goals for this year are, to first standardize the visits. So what is it that members want to know from visits? How are we approaching visits? Where are we keeping that information, like those kinds of things. And so I think that's something we will definitely, be able to tackle by December. But I think the long-term goal and the long-term function, will continue beyond that.
And then I know when you all originally were thinking about mentioning feedback to OSI, just not to the board. So that if there were additional implementation consideration on standards, that we would share that with them. So if schools are saying they need more resources or more options, or this is harder to implement for XYZ reason. Are we thinking about what that could look like too?
Yes. We did not, I would say, I took my steps today, at the Rivers Inn, but we have not talked about, we don't have a timeline yet of like when we will present, like, here's what this intake looks like. I think we will discuss in our committee, and like we did with the other work, coming back with materials and when. But we took our first stab now, since we are wrapping up graduation requirements and we have a bit more bandwidth, to start to think about what how we could chart that work out.
Thank you. Sorry, I had lots of questions.
If folks want, I'm happy to, I shared with Robert and, I'm sorry, Representative Henderson and Haley earlier today. But if folks want to see the draft sooner rather than later, I can also share that today. Because it was as a result of this.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Secretary. All right, thank you so much. We'll now move to educator excellence. Representative Jack.
Great, thank you. So as you know, we have had a vendor help us do some research and focus groups. That is now complete and we are waiting for the final report. We should be getting it, Jen, in the next week or two. Yeah.
By the end of this week.
Great. And so with that report, what the committee is going to start doing is scheduling meetings, consolidating what we learn, along with the work that we've done to date already as a board, even before I think my iteration of the board and before I joined, right? This has been a topic that we've looked at, and so integrating the new data and information we've gathered with what we've already done in the past, and then packaging it in a way that we can bring that to the education stakeholders, ranging from WTU to some of the agencies, and start having conversations, sharing the package of things that we've done and helping us craft more actionable recommendations that we would then move forward from there. And so eager to see the report, and we'll have more to share next time.
Question from the board.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm really excited about where we're at. I think you were very clear at the beginning, Representative Chick, just about like choosing one thing, focusing in on it, honing in on it, trying to develop a situation. Like Jen, thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this too. And I just think that, yes, I'm a teacher, and yes, like this will help teachers, but like this is also, and NASB, the thing we hear every year is like supporting early teachers is so pivotal to making sure that we disrupt the instability that students and families experience in school. And so like the significance of this work is not lost on many, and I'm hoping that we can really have some concrete steps after, we see the report and the research and then figure out what to do with it. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Representative Chang. We'll now move to student advisory. Now, this is usually a shared responsibility, so who's gonna start?
I am.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. So the May SAC meeting opened with minutes allotted for student members to catch up with friends and check in. And then we, as the student representatives, took turns introducing the following SAC relevant announcements, which include next year's SAC registration and student representative applications, along with the May 13th Youth Civic Leadership Summit, Senior Celebration, and Annual Report Progress. Representative Goulet introduced the two following resolutions. SR 26-7, calling for the inclusion of full-length novels and approved ELA curricula and including local school advisory teams in the decision-making process for curriculum changes, and SR 26-9, calling for developmentally appropriate kindergarten compulsory age cutoff in the District of Columbia. And Representative Thompson introduced SR 26-8, supporting the passage of Eric's ID Amendment Act of 2026. SEC members voted in favor of the passage of the resolution with 21 yeas, no nays, and no abstentions. SEC feedback included adding language on the training for law enforcement officers once Eric's ID law goes into effect in Washington, D.C.
And then after we talked about the SRs on the table, we had Ms. Sandlin from OSCE's Division of Health and Wellness come and talk to us about the PE standards and the revisions there, and SEC members asked questions and provided feedback. Then we had Imran present from the state of DC schools, and we also, members were asked about their thoughts on the report and asked follow-up questions. Then we had Mr. Hines present to us on the Gen Out Youth Chorus and offered services to all SAC members and schools in DC, trying to get more support and turnout there. And then SAC members spent the remaining of the meeting in our research groups, finalizing the recommendations that we just shared with you earlier to be highlighted within our final report. The last SAC meeting will be held on June 8th, which is next Monday, which celebrates our graduating seniors, and we hear from OSCE on their proposed artificial intelligence-based recommendations. And as for our committee actions, we are making final edits to the research reports, which we were just able to share with you, as well as the annual report team members finalizing the last bits of the annual report, including content, edits, and pictures.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, thank you guys. Student experience and engagement representative Colton is not here, to someone from the committee that can provide a report. Okay. Representative Goulet.
Okay, so this was a very useful meeting. We talked about several things that are upcoming. One was a discussion of the issue that we're gonna have to report out on student safety and supports. Representative Colson talked about getting data on these student suspensions and transfer rates, which was something that she wanted to see kind of where we were. We talked about updating the definition of bullying. And then Representative Colson raised the issue of school uniforms for discussion, which I think is something I support, but I don't know that the committee was unified on that, but it was something we want to take up, the idea of looking at school uniforms. I think they're great. The issue of real ID was brought up. Representative Johnson Law is going to share additional feedback with the committee on student access to real IDs. So we were going to do that at a future meeting. And then we did a lengthy debrief on the Youth Civic Leadership Summit in committee. We had Dr. Fleischer there, so we were able to commend him for his work on that. And then just talk about the next steps that we would do on some of the recommendations that tied into what the committee's goal was, which is trying to identify safety and supports for our students. The goal being ultimately to get recommendations to whomever the next mayor is for their transition process, to be able to incorporate potentially those recommendations and what they do for the new administration. We'll have a new mayor after this election. And then we talked about the developmentally appropriate kindergarten compulsory age cutoff resolution and passed out of committee, and I committed to draft legislation on it, which I have not done. We then talked about school resource officers. And then lastly, talked about, got a preview of some of the development of the annual report, which we've now heard today. So kind of have come full circle on these recommendations and delivered on everything that we promised to for this meeting. So good job to our committee chair, Team Michelle Colson, for those efforts. I'm glad to take questions though.
I'm
Instead.
So I haven't asked the question, has to be from any of the committees, I'm gonna take a point of privilege for Roy. I would like for you to expound a little bit on school uniforms and a little bit more so on SROs.
Yeah, so Team Michelle Colson brought up this issue to start discussing the issue of school uniforms. I'll speak personally for me. She seems supportive of it and wanted to discuss it further. I like school uniforms for a couple of reasons. One,
Are we talking about all the way through, like from?
yeah, I like them all the way through. And I'll tell you why I like them. So I think if you have school gear, it inspires school spirit for one thing. If students can have their insignia on shirts. I also think it creates an element of professionalism within the school. If students are wearing polos, khaki pants. And I think it also is something that provides equity for students. School uniforms are cheaper. They're easy to get, and that's oftentimes reduces a barrier for youth that don't have the money to get higher priced clothing items. So I mean, I'm a big fan of school uniforms, and see my colleague was as well. So it's something that I'm interested to discuss if anybody wants to. Are you talking about SROs? The SRO discussion that we had was stemming out of a conversation from the Youth Civic Leadership Summit. What I really found fascinating on that was that, I mean, the board was proposing crazy things a while back, getting rid of SROs, and this council did that. I mean, that was something that I would never support, but the issue is come around now is they weren't talking about getting rid of SROs anymore, which was interesting. It was talking about how they replicate the training SROs have gotten to teach other police officers how to deal with students more professionally. And I thought that was a major step forward. The only comments we heard that were negative about the SROs is some students just didn't know their SROs personally. They wanted to be able to know who that was to develop a connection. The sad thing, though, that we did hear about it was that the program's been decimated. When the DC Council proposed that legislation to phase out SROs, we lost 2/3 of the program through attrition. So the attrition rate of SROs exceeded the council's schedule in terms of stepping them down. And because people just left, they either retired or they went and got a job someplace else. If they wanted to be an SRO, they're like, DC's not for me. So like our program is now at 1/3 capacity. And I will tell you, it really was one of the worst decisions I've ever seen to get rid of SROs. Thank goodness our principals came in like in mass and testified that this was a hazard to student safety to get rid of these SROs. And I don't ever want to guess on things, but I'm gonna say, we had a situation outside Jackson Reed that was tragic. Absolutely tragic, 4:30 p.m. after dismissal. For me, the value of SROs is they know the students, they know what's going on, and they can operate both in the school and then outside the school. Whereas safe passage workers don't have necessarily quite the level of training, and they really don't have the in-school experience that an SRO has. So I would love to see us. I know the challenges associated with it, with the fact that, it's hard to keep officers in the city. We have a staffing shortage and we have a competitive hiring environment, but I would love to see us rebuild this program. And then to also do what the students said, which is to try to develop stronger relationships between the students and the officers. So that's what we talked about. It was a mixed bag of this is really great that the relationship is improving, but how sad it is that we lost so many of our good SROs to poor policy making. So that's where we were.
Right there.
So. I don't know why I thought schools already had it. It's
Not all.
right, unless there was a special program or something like the Montessori school. So right now, it's just an individual school decision. And you all are hoping to make.
Yeah.
Well, no, at least even in DCPS, if you just take DCPS, I don't think it's an LEA decision, it's just based decision. Because I did pre-K three and we're required by my work. And so, but, okay, so it's more, it must be a school-based
It's more of a
decision.
school thing and school pride thing. I know there's some schools, like, they folks out of school and they can buy shirts and stuff, but it wasn't able to apply.
Okay. Jail Wilson is, they, every year, they see what your child wears, and if they, you don't have to buy the local stuff. They have your, you can only wear this color pants, you can only wear this type of shirt. These are the uniform, like flag combinations that you can get. And, if you want to buy a Jail Wilson t-shirt, sweatshirt, hoodie, you can. But, yeah. But I just assumed that we all had some form of.
Just a question, going back to our previous discussion, at least in my mind, the youth summit was designed to inform your recommendations. Are you still finding the area to connect those dots?
I mean, I think so. I think that we've got some, we've got some gaps still, like we talked about with mental health, where, you know, the initial discussion with the MICVA students was a really productive one. But the initial recommendation that came in, you know, had some things that needed to be worked out, some serious things. So something like that, I think, you know, we can put in there, but I think what we've got to do as a committee is see what we get back from MICVA and then see, you know, what we send over. But I mean, I think really the key is to get those things over before the transition committees start making decisions. Because that's when they'll really be used. You'll have a fresh set of eyes looking at something. And if we come in with some recommendations that are made from a place of, you know, knowledge and youth engagement, I think they, so I think it's all positive. I think we've got to just now get those recommendations out in the fall.
Representative Thompson.
One point of clarification, I don't believe the board ever actually weighed in, around removing SROs.
It's something crazy.
I think, I don't know who we would be, but, at least in my time on the board, we did not actually recommend removing our SROs from school. What we did do, and one of the reasons I asked us earlier in the year to revisit, our safety recommendations, was because we talked about things like training, and coordination, which I'm happy to hear the committee is reconsidering. Also, it was very much related to the MICVA questions or commitments they asked us to make. And so just building on our previous work, I think is really important, but also noting where we have stood, I think it's really important too. We never officially, to my knowledge, called to remove the SROs from school.
It may have been before your time. It's SR 20-10. Now, and I'll read it right now. It says that.
20 would be before my time, yes.
Okay,
That'd be 2020.
Okay, good. So, yeah, you weren't responsible for this, but with this board, and I think maybe what we should do is we should repeal this, because it was just a terrible idea. This board went on record to say that the mayor should develop a plan to remove school resource officers from DC public schools. I mean, we actually went on record to say such a crazy thing. And, I mean, I think, you know what, I'll get a resolution together to repeal it, because, I mean, I think we've learned our lesson from that, but yeah, but that was SR 20-10.
I mean, we can discuss like what we think next step should be. I don't know if is even helpful to call attention, if it's something that we don't share currently, as a board, but the only reason I can say, I know that was before my time, is because I know that the resolutions are named, so 20 will be here, 2020. So that would be the board's 10th.
I don't think anybody was on the board.
No one on the board now would have been present,
Yeah.
at that time. I don't know if that needs a repeal, but more recent than that, is our recommendations around safety, which do not offer that.
Which were November 2022.
Correct.
Also the same thing you guys voted to.
They were November 2022. And that was off the heels of a very rough start.
The my very first one.
Very momentous.
But I'm happy to work with you on that.
We needed your wisdom on the board in 2020. You should run earlier.
You have me now.
There it is.
For now.
Okay. I appreciate, I'm gonna bring this back for us and everything. Were there any more comments about that? Glad I brought it up, I just like the comment. All right, I don't see any more. Are there any external committee reports that anyone would like to add? All right, well, thank you for all of our committee reports. We will now move on to new business. I would like to ask if members have any addition to the following list. Okay, do I have one? Okay. Right now, what I have is SAC as student representative, application update. Kindergarten legislation. And those are the two, that's the list. Are there additions? Representative Bass from 6.
Yeah, so I'd like to add, two things. One, I know we tabled the AI, resolution. I've made some edits. I looked at what the SAC provided along with some additional, edits that I received from other members. Made some edits and sent that to you, VP Goulet and Executive Director Butler. I would like to discuss the potential of putting that on for a vote. Then I would like to also add appropriate screen time resolution to go to committee. After speaking with Representative Goulet, I learned that the best decision would be to move that to committee. Yes, that's all.
Thank you so much for those two. Are there others?
So I'd like to just talk about a letter that I'm working on special ed transportation. It's some additional outreach regarding that constituents and just some of the concerns that I thought we addressed and some of that. So I'll talk about that one. I want to just based on recent events, I want to put a resolution to repeal the previous resolution on SROs on here for the purpose of referral to committee. So I'll put that on there and then it's in. You know, based on this board. No, that's the easy one.
Okay, are there any others? Representative Thompson?
I have two items. I would like us to actually talk about the official adoption of the high school graduation requirements task force. I believe we should be adopting that report. I believe we can talk about it. We've adopted all the other reports, so I would like us to consider adopting the report. I also would like to talk about next steps for Eric's Law, since it has now been what do you call it? Asked by the board to make sure we are on the same page.
You have one more, Representative?
Yeah, I'll make this part quick, but the issue of discussing promotion, let's call it.
Social promote?
Just promotion in general.
Promotion.
We'll call it promoting students.
Promote. Okay. Gonna have a lot of fun. Yes, ma'am.
There is a July 9th hearing about creating. Not a business exception, but category for charter school students on the DC lottery. That allows students from close charter schools to have a not prioritization or preference on the DC lottery application. And so staff from the minister's office has asked the board has any thoughts and wants to justify said hearing.
Okay, got it. Representative Williams.
I don't know if I need to add this, right? It was the last month and then we'll pull it back, so maybe I do, but it's a ceremonial resolution for the Walls High School principal. Sir Sylvia Isaac, who's been retiring after 40 years of service at school Belleville.
right, we have a robust list of items now, okay? So I'm going to start, if I don't see any other, I just want to make sure we're around, any other hand. I don't. So I'm gonna start with the SAC and student representative application update, Dr. Fleishman.
Thank you. And again, great job to our current student representatives and our entire SAC. I cannot be more proud. So I'm gonna focus these next few slides on where we're at on applications. So these have gone throughout the city, to principals, to organizations, to different agencies. I know, for example, the DC Public Charter School Board put it on their newsletter. And the students themselves are sharing it out. Current members are reapplying for next year. So right now we have about 43 applicants, and 34 of those applied to become student representatives. So it's a good number of students. And if you could go to the next slide, please. This slide just shows ward by ward the numbers that we're getting. So blue is just total number of SAC applicants. Gray is the student representative applicants. As you might know, in the bylaws, we need at least one student representative from east of the river who resides in east of the river. And so we already have 8 student representative applicants for that. So we're good on that. And we're about the same place as we were last year in terms of kind of the halfway mark for open applications. They close June 21st. So we still have a lot of time. I definitely could use member support, getting the word out. And now that we know which wards are signing up, and the next slide will show which schools are signing up, we can now do an even more targeted push for which schools are not yet represented. I don't know why it's like a little crunched up, but I can share out like a better slide for you. But essentially what Executive Director Butler mentioned, our goal is to get every school across DC. So far, we have 14 schools represented, so we're not exactly meeting that mark just yet, but we still have time now. And SAC applications reopen in August. As schools reopen and students are selecting their extracurriculars, then we'll know which schools we don't have and really target those schools as well. So that's really how we got about 150 SAC members for this school year, is just really targeting the schools that are underrepresented. You do not have to have a 4.0 GPA to not just participate, but run as a student representative. And this slide also shows that the bulk of signups, almost a quarter of applicants, are coming from Banneker. And then DCI is at around 16%. So a lot of schools represented have like 1 or 2 students. So definitely want to get up those numbers. I will reach out to each of you and really work with you to get those numbers up. And if you could go to the next slide. So the next steps are, again, to push these out. And then members, you will be scoring, blind scoring the student representative applications between June 25th and July 17th. Other quick reminders, members, is that June 8th, so next Monday, is our final SAC meeting. And it's our senior celebration. And so we'll be honoring graduating seniors and sharing out the annual report, lifting up those recommendations and talking about next steps at that meeting. So you're welcome to come. I believe OSCE might also be attending to share their model AI policy as well. We'll have the research assistants. So UC Education Research Collaborative will be there. So if you want to give them a big thank you, I know I will. I know that our student representatives will. They will be there as well. So there'll be cake, if that's even more enticing, music, and of course, our brilliant students. And just a few other quick reminders, in August, our new student representatives will have their orientation, so you're welcome to come to that as well. That's looking long-term, so I will scoot on to the last slide. Again, these are available if you need them, but this is just a quick timeline. Again, for open applications, closed applications, and scoring. So I will be in touch with all of you, and I'm very much looking forward to next year. I think the only other thing I'd like to say is you had questions about the research, the youth participatory action research at the next meeting. I think we'll kind of talk more about the grows and glows from that and members that will continue on and the new student representatives kind of sharing like what we did and how they want to move forward with that work. I know the DC Education Research Collaborative certainly wants to continue that partnership, so more to come on that. But thank you all so much for helping get, at least we almost have about 50 applicants so far, so. Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Fleischer. I will say that you're maybe missing one from Duke Ellington. I know a lady that did apply. Because I watched her submit, and so you may be missing one from there, and I know you're about to get another one from Duke Ellington. Just
Okay.
saying, yeah, but
All right.
I
More
do know
there.
that. I know about 2 of them, and they
Yes.
have a familiar name. that
I
know.
will look out for that familiar name.
Okay.
Couple of quick questions. So do we have a place on our website yet where people can apply? I know we had the little QR code thing.
Yes, it's been up for 2 weeks now.
Oh, it is up now. Okay,
Yeah.
Good job. Okay,
Andrew,
good.
you sent out a message to everyone know what's up on the website.
It's on the homepage, like,
Literally on the
yeah,
website.
it's like
Andrew,
a
this will
banner.
teach me to read your emails more carefully. So thank you. That's excellent. And then what's the deadline again?
June 21st, I have a stack of applications over here. Or not applications, flyers that you can share. And we'll also share out an email. I'll share an email with you. I know Executive Director Butler is sharing out emails to principals. So, but now that we have the annual report, we actually have something to share, like with the principals to kind of see what they do, all the work that's done, and entice the students to apply as well.
Why is Ward 4 way up on everybody else this year? Is there something going on? Like, is T. Michelle Colson pumping it out? Like, why do they have more people?
Well, we don't ask in the application how you heard about it.
But they had the most by far last year too. So I'm gonna try to catch up with
Is there a
them.
competition?
Really is.
Maybe we should do it.
Yeah, you know what? I will try to find, no,
I'm
I
gonna
don't
ask her.
think ethically I'm allowed to give prizes to members, but
You should have-
I'll give you your kudos, that'll be your,
I'm only in second
ethically.
place.
but yes, I'll reach out. And of course, you could give flyers out at DPR, like facilities. I know, like I dropped off one, I'm gonna drop off one at Politics and Pros where I saw Satara and her family, so like students congregate outside of school as well, so just if you post them up, share them with students. Another thing would be, I think in the message to principals, sharing those with social studies teachers to get students civically engaged. So there's a lot of ways to share the message of signing up and all the great work that students can do, get community service hours, meet decision makers, so it's a very good opportunity for members.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
You have a question? Go ahead, Representative Williams.
Yeah, thank you. So then what the general SAC applications, we'll get those July or early August, or you think?
So you're going to get them
So
in,
let's be, you all do not get SAC applications, you only get student rep
Yes.
applications.
We accept everyone who applies for the.
right, that's, okay.
That's how we
They're on
got
that
something, right?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, no, that would be a much longer process, cause last year we had
Yeah.
150 of those.
Okay, great.
And I can't imagine you all want to do 150 SAC applications.
So then we just need to
June 25th.
promote it whenever, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
June
okay.
25th, so
Okay.
it closes for essays. I think SAC, it'll just
My
stay
question's
open,
irrelevant.
but for student representatives, it closes June 21st.
Okay.
But I get messages of like, hey, I missed a deadline.
Yeah.
Can I still apply for SAC? Absolutely, like, we'll take them. But for student representatives that closes, it will be blind, so you won't see their names or anything.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions in this area? All right, thank you so much, Dr. Fletcher. Appreciate you. Kindergarten legislation, for the Vice President-elect.
Yes, excellent. So I apologize that my printer ran out of paper and I did not have enough. So I gave copies out that I had, but everybody else has this electronically. So I'll quickly walk through the legislation that's drafted here. And let me pull it up. So this bill is very simple. It follows exactly what we did in the resolution. It just amends two areas of DC code. The first place it amends is the compulsory education requirements section to exempt two categories of students from truancy reporting. One would be students who have a birth date between the dates of June 16th and September 30th. And the parent has done two things. One, they've notified DCPS in writing of the desire to defer the student from kindergarten for a year. And they've provided proof that the student is enrolled in I use the exact term, not education-based, a classroom-based pre-K learning facility as opposed to a play-based pre-K4 classroom. So those would be the two requirements. The other set of students that would be exempt from truancy reporting are students who moved into the District of Columbia and established residency after the start date of kindergarten. So this was a very specific example with a Florida family that we had that moved in with about 2 months left in the school year. They enrolled their child in kindergarten for the upcoming year, was promptly told, no, that student has to go to first grade. Now, this student was not able to, in the home state of Florida, apply for kindergarten because the cutoff was the end of July and the student's birthday was in September. They were then subsequently threatened with a protective services filing for child neglect because the student was not enrolled 2 months left in the school year. And the family said, no, we're going to send our kid back to Florida because we're not going to be harassed by DCPS. And then they went to private school was the end of the story because they said they'd never been so disgusted with dealing with a public school system in their life. So that was that family. So that would prevent any similar situations like that from occurring. And it probably is more common than we even know because Maryland has a date that's 30 days different from the district. And there's probably a lot of crossover between students between Maryland and DC. So no student who just moved into DC with a couple of weeks left in the school year would be required to try to enroll in kindergarten at that time. The second part of the legislation is just simply giving parents the choice in the My School DC portal. If they have a student that falls within that range of June 16th through September 30th, they would have then the option of selecting either pre-K3 or pre-K4, pre-K4, pre-K5, and then pre-K5 or kindergarten. So they would have those two choices. And then ultimately they have the choice between going between kindergarten and first grade. So that's what this does. It's exactly what we did in the resolution. I think it's drafted very well, but I do intend to share it with the executive branch to see if they have any comments on it. But it's short and sweet, and ready to go. And I fixed the definition that was wrong in there too. They had the word steps, since this was drafted in 1925 when school started in September. We had September in there, but it's now August school starts. So I cleaned up the DC code by changing that.
Other questions for Representative Goulet?
My only thing would be not just two votes, but further board members, when you have draft legislation like this, especially something like that's already listed on the agenda, like kindergarten legislation for the state, it has not been posted, so we have a violation of the law. So it was already stated on the agenda, I have to post materials for the meeting on Friday.
But technically that's in resolutions, not legislation.
It's on, says we have to post all materials for the board agenda online.
Yeah, right. I do not want to get us out of compliance with that, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just you, I'm just saying, like,
No, but
obviously, it is other people who have sent things after the agenda has been posted online the Friday before the meeting. So like the public doesn't have access to this. But we also, the staff technically, I don't think have an electronic copy of this.
They do not, but as only of an hour or two ago, so.
Yeah,
So,
so.
but duly noted, I will make sure
Thank you,
that
Steph.
I get this up there, because we do want to share this good news with the public that we are trying to fix this issue. And that's helpful. So I'd like to move a motion at this time to put this on the agenda. If that's appropriate at this time, for a vote at the next public meeting. So moved.
You moved the motion and second.
I can't second it, so, but I need a second for the motion, right?
Yes, you do. Is there a second? Second. It has been properly moved and seconded to put this on the agenda for the August meeting, well, no, it's June meeting, June meeting, okay. All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any nays? Abstention? It carries, sir. It will be on the June public meeting. Sure. Agenda. So thank you. All right, next we have, I believe I'm coming to Representative Best. For two things,
Yeah,
AI resolution and screen time resolution. You can go back to back.
thank you. So, the first resolution, screen time focuses on evidence-based developmentally appropriate screen time and educational, technology policies. It calls for DCPS, OSSI, and public charter school board to just develop clear guidance around classroom screen time use, and conduct a comprehensive audit, as well as privacy protections. And so I would like to introduce this to committee. I know that we're also planning on having a panel on this as well. So I think that the timing is right. We could hear back from the panel and make some edits to it if we like, and see where it goes. So that's that one. Second one is the AI fluency one. Once again, I have made some edits. I listened to what the students said. I listened to what some parents said. I listened to what some educators have stated, and I've made some significant edits to it to ensure that the language in the resolution actually matches the intent of the policy. And so I'm excited about that. I think together these resolutions are really about balance. We want students to be prepared for the future, but we also want to protect their development, privacy, independent thinking, and their foundational academic skills. I think the goal is not to reject technology, but to make sure that it's used with intention, transparency, equity, and educational value.
The discussion around these, and you kind of did them. Because you did screen time first, the resolution, and then you did AI resolution. So what we'll talk about first is the
Screen time.
Let's do the screen time, which should not be a big problem because of putting it to committee, just recommending it to committee. And just select it to the department committee. That shouldn't be a big discussion, but I'll entertain any comment about it.
So we're just doing the screen time first?
You'll go to screen time first.
I'll simply say that I thank you, and you know, I've been there's a lot of Ward 1 parents who have reached out to me, and that you've referred to me, so you know, I think this is a good idea, and it's timely in the sense that there's other cities our size who are like crafting these guidelines, so I think it's wise, particularly in my view, at the earliest ages for us to consider what makes sense.
It's funny, I had gotten off the phone with a parent and then I saw NASB's invitation where they were talking about the exact same things.
Thank you. Other comment?
I just want to thank you, Representative Best, for your leadership on both these issues. And, you know, I'm speaking specifically on the first part of this. I mean, for me, you just, like, this stuff I think has a toxic impact on kids' brains if they're getting too much screen time, you know, at the wrong time. I mean, it just triggers the dopamine. They're not able to then have a potential spend. So I am all on board for this, and I just want to thank you for, getting this draft going here. We can get it to committee and then, have a great discussion in August about it. I just appreciate everything you've done, so thanks.
Yeah, I think the key is just intentionality, behind it. I think as long as it's intentional, then it makes sense.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and, recommend this, I'll send it to the committee, I'm CC LR, committee that I'll put it in. So, get that one. I'll wait till you just make that, I know. Okay. I like it now.
Oh, okay.
From a parliamentary. Okay, so the next one that you had, that you talked about a little bit, was a protocol, or is the AI resolution. Yeah, basically what we're doing is, tabling it, what you're asking.
Yeah, we're taking it off. I want to take it off the table and I want to present it back so we could, put it up for vote.
Okay.
I would just strongly urge everyone to look at the edits, that have been made. I think, the second half of it has been fairly substantial to make sure that we are, one, addressing the issues that we've heard, but also being true to the intent of the work, which is we want to get this thing up and moving. We want some guidance on it. But we also want to make sure that we are setting our students up for success in a world that will be dominated by this. And so thinking through like what are the human skills that are needed for students to be successful, and then build up those developmentally appropriate components from there on out.
And I don't think that anything really has to be done on this, because it's already been on the agenda, or we're stating at this particular point.
That's not correct.
Okay.
So one, it can only be untabled at the public meeting, it cannot be untabled at the working session.
Sure.
And if there are significant amendments, amendment form needs to be submitted, and whatever you have sent to us needs to be made public. So the amendment form, which, because you're saying it's a drastic different than the first one, it's gonna have to be voted to be untabled, and then it has to be voted to be amended. And all those need to be shared, right? And then we will share them once we get them. When we have them, so those, so it's two processes. You have to untable it, and then you have to amend it, and none of that can happen to the public meeting.
So we do that at the public meeting, right?
Yeah, there's nothing to
And
add.
that's where I was going, I know there are things that have happened to that, but as far as recommended or voting on the agenda, we don't have to.
No, because it was tabled.
We have it just table, but these things have to happen prior to us getting to there.
Okay, as far as the information, do I need to send anything else to you? I know you
Well,
have
yeah, you
it.
have to fill out an amendment form, where you have the exact lines, the numbers, everything. Yeah, but Jen has everything ready to send to you, we talked about that, that's what you should.
Okay, I appreciate that.
have a red line version.
Well, no, there's an actual amendment
Okay.
form.
I know, I'm just saying I have a red line version that we can share.
And then
Yeah,
once those
but-
dates happen, then it's.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine, comment.
More a question to the staff, but for both Representative Best and myself, because I'm gonna be doing similar, in terms of adding information to the ELA one. With the amendment form, if we're doing like an amendment nature of a substitute with this, do we like include a strike and insert version with the form that you're giving us? Because that's the best way to track it, for me at least, is to be able to see a strike and insert. I mean, I know that's required at DC Council for amendment nature of substitute, because you just track it each year. So what does our amendment form look like?
Last time we did this, I believe we filled out the amendment form and, with each line and each amendment. And then I don't remember if there was a line version.
Yeah, because some of them were just like changing words and lines.
Yeah.
Right.
But if this one's more substantial, then yes, it'd be.
It would be helpful, so I'll do that with mine, it just might be cleaner.
So the English
If the-
ELA, I'm sorry, I'm trying to separate now, because I just don't know what that one is.
If the changes, I mean, there are a significant part that's like insane, but if the changes are different even in the title itself.
So if it's a title, it's a different resolution.
So if it's a different resolution, could I introduce that then?
Can, but then that would have to
Go through the whole process.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, that is-
So if you change that title, it has to go all the way back.
So it's like, you can't change title because it wants to be.
Okay, that's fine.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, I don't agree with that, why can't we do that? Because
Because they are numbered and different, so it wouldn't be the same number, it would be a different. He's changing items in it and he's changing the title.
Well, let's talk about that, because you can do that at council all the time.
But we're not
As long as the number, well, but there's nothing in Robert's rules that prevents title from being changed as an amendment, so let's just discuss it offline. I think that, I think that's possible, because it happens frequently.
We'll have that discussion. I tend to agree a little bit more, so, Director, but we'll have that discussion.
What would you like to change the title to?
It's, yeah, to be more reflective of, not just, to be more reflective of the actual resolution itself. I think I had initially envisioned it one way, and I think that my language in the resolution itself was not, say that again?
It should do.
A little bit,
Okay.
a little bit, but not really, the intent was always the same. But I think that in the original copy of the resolution, it did not fully depict what it was that I really wanted it to do. So this one is more in-depth, it's more detailed, it explains what this resolution is and what it is not. And so,
But we can have that discussion.
okay, fair enough.
That's default. Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anything else? that
Well, I
we
just have a
understand
question on
What's
that.
gonna happen
What's
in
the deadline date for any feedback on it?
Well, I guess, and I think this is what makes it, because it hasn't been shared out with anyone as a part of the working session material. So ideally, people would be able to look at that now and share feedback.
Yeah.
But it's just one of these things where if he's just amending something that has been tabled, we would need the amendment obviously to go out with the public meeting material.
Which will be on June 12th.
June 12th is the deadline for that.
Okay.
And so
So should
I
I-
would just say in the follow-up email that goes out for action items, we will include a copy of what has been submitted to board leadership to share with the rest of the whole.
Thank you.
Because again, it's like no one else has seen those documents, so no one else knows what they are.
Thank you, Director.
Like Representative Thompson has. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a good solution, assuming, for the resolution that is being untabled. I'm not sure what this conversation is going to land, or if it has been decided around the change of the title. Because, or how important that is.
It's not super important.
If it's not important, I would just recommend that we just leave it as is. If not, then I would imagine in order to be reflective, since it is a new resolution, we would essentially need to put that on the agenda tonight. Because it will be a new resolution. If it's not, does that make sense? Like, you're essentially saying to us, Director Butler, per hour, not anybody else's, for us, your assessment, as a parliamentarian, is that would make it a new resolution. And if that's true, and it's a new resolution, with a new title, even if it's not technically written, we would need to add that to the agenda either tonight or make a motion at the meeting, to add it, to the agenda. So, you all can decide, where we land on this, but it sounds like we might be adding, there's also an option to add a new resolution at the top of the public meeting if the title change is important to you, and our rules do not permit that.
Would we still be able to vote on it on that day?
If you have the votes, if you have the votes to add it at the top of the meeting, then yes.
And then I would also say, because essentially, when you table something and it is not postponed, something can die on the table. If no one ever untables it, it just dies.
Correct.
So there's no, you don't have to untable something, it can just die on the table and then you can start whatever you want. So there are many.
So I guess that,
Yeah, this could be a new resolution.
I guess I
Title
would
to all of this.
add and. I don't know, I would wanna, at the top of the meeting, then add that as a new vote, a new vote on the table.
You could
Yeah,
do that.
I
I
would-
mean, I don't, it's not, yes, you could do that.
Yeah.
You would need to, there's a higher vote threshold to add something to the agenda, so you would just need to have the votes to meet that threshold to add it at the meeting. And because it is new business tonight, and if you have something prepared that you want us to look at, you could also say, hey, y'all, this is the new version. Just email it to us now, and we can consider
We're
it.
gonna go out with the notes in the morning,
Okay.
because Jim will put it on SharePoint. and then
Yeah,
people
but I'm just saying because we haven't seen it,
Right.
but if there's something that you're gonna put in front of us now, instead of untabling, you also can do that.
I appreciate what you're adding to this, the conference. So do we need to, I'm asking you because I don't know. Do we need to vote on that saying we're adding it tonight to maybe to public meeting, whatever that is? Do we have to vote on that this evening so that it is there? Because it's gonna be a resolution.
We can all, like, it's just like all the other resolutions, so if this is a new resolution. And somebody in like coming during new business, you can say, I wanna add this to the meeting. And so Representative Best, can do that tonight, that is an option.
And that's what I'm.
We would just not untable the other resolution.
Exactly.
Um,
Okay.
And we can litigate later. I mean, you know, I just don't, what I don't want, I'm just
Yeah.
giving people options, because what I don't want to happen is between now and the public meeting, we don't have a final decision on this, or there's not clarity in our documents. And then this resolution this is left in the balance. And so I'm not saying that to diminish the importance of the argument. I'm just saying in case we don't get a clear answer or resolve by then, this is a way to introduce the updated and most reflective ideas, while acknowledging, there are other things we also need to discuss. I just don't want his work, to get caught in the balance of that.
That's the point that I mean, that has to be voted on this evening.
It's
Have that
it's not a
option.
matter of me agreeing or not. I'm just saying we don't have that decision tonight, but we do have this mechanism. tonight.
Right.
I would like to go with that. I just sent, all the members,
Okay. So can you introduce that as a motion?
I'd like to introduce a motion to introduce, recommendations, for building student and educator readiness in the age of artificial intelligence resolution to the upcoming meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
It's been probably moved in second, I believe.
Yes, you can take a vote with something go to the public meeting agenda at this meeting, we can say.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? You abstain? Okay, we have one abstention. Fully noted. Representative Henderson. I believe it carries. So it will be on the agenda.
And I would say. Yeah, staff needs to give the number on those things.
Right.
And so we will do that before we send it out, and say that or tomorrow.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Representative Thompson, for kind of walking us through that. Appreciate it. Okay, now I'm gonna move to the special education transportation.
Yes, so, yeah, I received, outreach from a constituent who's been connected with other families experiencing similar issues related to special education transportation. We did a resolution on this back in 2023. I mean, the issue basically is that we have a new director in there, but since that new director's been in place, I've heard reports that there are like just some of the issues that we had resolved are kind of creeping back up, particularly when there's substitute drivers that are in place. So the key that really, I want to make sure we're not going backwards on this because it's a real big deal. But then the second issue is they're supposed to have some improvements in place starting October 1 or for the next school year regarding GPS tracking and buses. So I'd like to try to put a letter together on this that does two things. One is just checks in on kind of where some of the progress that we've made, so we're not slipping backwards. And then secondly, list some of the improvements that were supposed to be taking effect for next school year and just asking whether those are on track. I kind of want to keep an eye on this, and I want to just check with people, see if anybody's heard similar concerns from their constituents on like the reliability slipping a little bit. Maybe that
I've never considered it.
never approves it, so it never got.
I mean, what I heard from my constituents is.
Then a letter's overdue, sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can also check it.
Director Bud.
And I think a more appropriate, right, maybe it's not appropriate. Another route to consider is that we have a leadership meeting, I see next week, and also just ask. Have a conversation, because I just don't know, because the newest person that they put in this role, I think has been there maybe 60 days, if that, and so I'm not sure, I mean. ASA DOT is a very big job, but maybe they've wrapped their head around all of it in like the first 60 days. I mean, in that first, but in their first 60 days, I just don't imagine that that person has. Just because it just takes time to onboard people. And I don't know if they, but I think it's maybe helpful to ask Dr. Mitchell about that and to see where that person is and to have conversations, because I think she can tell you where their procurement process is. Because I think that was the last piece that it was under contract and had to go through, like, be approved by council. And no, she can tell you that thing. I don't know if we need a letter to ask that. Because any real improvements or like any changes to the timeline, or if it's something's been delayed in council or the procurement process. And I just feel like there's no reason to do that if we haven't at least had the conversation.
Letters are like, you typically like a data request or asking for a meeting, those are some of the letters that the board has sent before.
So for me on this, we do have it on the agenda. We're talking with her already, I think, the next meeting with us,
This next week.
which is next week. What concerns me is this is a really disruptive issue for parents, and I think as Representative Henderson pointed out, it's a persistent problem. So I want to get some things in writing. So the purpose of the letter, I just don't want to have a conversation with her offline. I want to get certain things in writing with commitments of timelines that have already been committed to, but I want to see if we're still on track for them. Because like the parents who call me up about this and email me are experiencing like real disruptions to their lives every time their kids are late to school, or they have to take the kids to school because the bus didn't show up. So I don't think a private conversation, I think a private conversation is great, but I also want to get some reassurance in writing that this is, you know,
What does that reassurance look like?
well, the commitments that were made, because there was commitment, a whole list of commitments made about how this was going to be approved, including getting the GPS as the process. So I want to see if that's still on
That
track.
would be instituted this upcoming school.
Correct, and I want to make sure that's still on track. There's concern that that's not going to be ready. And if it is, great. If we find out, but the problems are on the staffing side too. So I also want to ask about that, because the issue is anytime somebody's off, like if you get the regular bus driver in there, things are running great. As soon as though they need to bring a sub in, that's when you start to see the delays that are occurring. And the kids are getting late to school. And then like for some of these students that have special needs, it can be really disruptive to the student's entire day. And that's the challenge that parents are talking to me about, is if the kid's late for school, like it throws off their whole day because they just have difficulty like adjusting to that situation. So I
Can
am
be open to, after having a conversation with them, seeing if there's the need to write the letter to like, to confirm what was discussed.
yes, I'm open to always having, you know, a discussion about that, but I just. And maybe everything's still on track, but I just like Ossie to put that in writing and say, we're still on track, so then we can go back to parents and say.
If I get that far, right?
Here's the letter, Ossie's committed to getting these things done in writing, is that they're nervous because there's been problems, and and I think this is an area that, you know, we have focused in on and we've made improvements, at least on paper, but maybe not all over the place, so.
And so I think it's gotta be helpful to me. You said they've made a list of things, like to whom and where's that list, so that the staff could keep track of it. And I know, I don't think it was sent to us.
It was
something that.
council. This council had a hearing on this. I mean, the issue was staffing. Number one issue was they were gonna hire staff. And they were there, because the issue was that the buses were late and they were gonna improve on-time arrivals. So staffing was on-time arrivals. And then it was the issue of the GPSs. Those are the main three things that I heard commitments on. So that's what I want to focus on the letter. I asked the parents to put together a list of their issues, because they've also made commitments to parents. You know, and all I'm asking for is this was just really an inquiry about, you know, what other people's experiences were. I mean, I'll send a letter out to the members. If the members want to sign on to it,
I would say.
that's great.
We'll write the letters, but things get lost when individual members write letters and they never get done. And then it's August and we still don't have the letter.
But I will, let me put it this way. I'm fine with doing it as a board thing. I will send it in my individual capacity now. So, because this matters to my constituents, so.
And I can appreciate that. What I will say, what was a particular situation that we're gonna have the meeting and then we'll need to send a letter or escalate it to a point where it's from the board. Make that decision then. Okay,
Yes, absolutely. I'm with you.
okay, thank you. All right. We can- Next one, I'm trying to go in order because it's starting to get out of order. There's a July 9th.
The resolution to repeal.
To repeal, okay, my bad.
Probably,
Resolution to repeal.
yeah, we already talked about this. I just asked to be referred to committee.
All right, so it would go to, I would agree with you on that.
C committee.
C committee. Five, just that it goes to the C committee, okay? Thank you. All right. Then, I believe we'll be dealing with
Task force report.
okay. Every road. Task force report now.
Yes, I would like the board, to take a vote at the next meeting to officially adopt the task force report. I feel like we've done this for other reports. As far as I know that we, sent a letter already, to OSSI. And I know we noted where there were some things that we, needed the support and clean up, but, I do think, given just the amount of work that went into it, I would like some type of public acknowledgement that the board has accepted it. And I think it'll be a good way to close the loop, with the task force members. We tend to adopt reports that come out of committee. I don't know if we need to put it forth with the CTLR committee or something, but, I do think that, and we hadn't discussed if this was the next step, but I would like us to consider some type of formal process, for saying these are the recommendations that came from the task force and, publish them on the website, a couple things. That's it, that's the agenda item.
Question. Should we do the same thing we just did with Representative Best? Because this should be an SR where the board is officially, and I fully support this. I think the task force did an incredible job. I think we should be adopting the report. But should we do it as an SR then?
None of the other board reports, at least in my team, have ever been adopted as an SR. The reports are adopted as an administrative vote. And in the time I've been on, we've done 3 reports. And this is not in addition to each year's annual report.
But how is that reflected on the website then? In publications, or is that?
Yes. Literally, it says publications. You
Yeah,
click on
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and-
I think building up, so we would just do an administrative vote. They
But it
won't
is already
send
published on
SR.
the website, because we published the final and the finalists.
I know,
Okay. So what do we have to do to get on the agenda?
we gotta put it on the agenda.
You gotta
Okay,
make a
that's
decision.
it.
I'm just asking us to put it on the agenda and like officially adopt.
So. Thank you, Representative Thompson. There's been a motion to put it on the agenda. There's a second.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays, abstention? Thank you, Representative Thompson.
I just
Okay.
want to be able to tell them that if their thing is adopted, they
Right.
asking us questions, you know.
Exactly.
Just wanted to be clean.
Jen?
The next-
That's correct. Representative Thompson, there's ID.
Yeah, I just wanted, to follow up on this. I know I'm planning to testify tomorrow. I saw the board's testimony tomorrow. I don't know if this will be writing in person. I don't know if others, have things they want to add, but I do want to know that this is not the final step for this. Because it is a committee hearing. It's not passage, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page as the board around, just where this is in process and see if folks, had any questions.
I don't know, this is a question I will be here tomorrow morning. Well, I think personally.
So the board testimony, the job will be given, and that's what they can share it out with everyone. So that's what we read.
Yeah, I saw the, I knew there was a board testimony. I didn't know how it was going to be delivered. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's, I dropped off last.
Yeah. First thing in the morning tomorrow. Thank you,
He's there.
promoting students. Promotions, as you call it.
You know, and interestingly, in the kindergarten thing, I actually had to exempt, this from that section in DC code. So there's a section in code on specifically how promotions are done grade by grade. And it is the sole discretion of the principal with certain criteria. There's a whole section on it. It was passed, fairly recently. You know, what got me thinking about this is actually something that you said, I think, President Patterson, and then this exchange I had with a witness, at the last public meeting. And I think this is the new challenge that we need to take up, because, you know, what we've done is we've looked through standards and tried to get standards right. Then we have now done the graduation requirements. You know, and I was trying to figure out, you know, I thought that when I came on this board, that if you made the standards perfect and the graduation requirements perfect, that would solve the challenge we're facing, but it's not solving it at all.
Not at all.
And what I have learned, and the epiphany I have had, is the issue is we're ignoring our own standards. Is that we set standards, or these children are not meeting the standards, and yet they're just aging through our system. So I think we need to, as a board, as our number one goal, if we want to actually make sure that the high school diploma in DC means something, is to address promotion. And set actual standards where if students aren't at the skill level that they need to be, they don't progress forward on the high school diploma track. And that's a very tough discussion to have. But when I talk to parents, I mean, what they've said is basically that they send their kids to DCPS because it looks good on a transcript that they were able to pass all these AP courses as a DCPS graduate. So it is not the diploma itself. And when you look at three facts, one, the fact that we had a report in this room from the folks,
Policy.
yeah, what's the
DC,
policy
policy.
center?
What problem are you trying to solve?
No, I want to have a panel. I think we have heard over and over again that we're promoting students who don't meet our standards. So I think we need to start setting standards on this board for actual promotion that may be different from what's in DC code right now. That's what I want to address. And I want to take it up as a panel in the fall. And I just wanted to see, I wanted to put it out there. This is what I'm going to pursue, because I think it is the key we're missing in all of this.
I like the discussion. Go right ahead.
Yeah, maybe I could build off for you, Executive Director Buzz. So I'll let you jump in to maybe. If that's okay.
Let me turn around. I did not see your hand. Right ahead.
So I have a couple of questions about this. I think we have to be clear on what education standards are. Our education standards have nothing to do with how students are promoted. Education standards are just the things we want students to learn in that grade band around a particular topic. But the curriculum and the grading policy are not connected to standards in that way. And understanding also, like, how do we equate that when the standard for passage is a C? And so I think we have to understand that a
Or
student who
a
gets,
D, a D
or a D,
plus.
like, but the point is like, it is very low, and we
Yes.
don't set the grading standards for like coursework and those types of things. And so I think that's a different quote unquote standard that the board doesn't have authority to set. It's like the grading standard, like what qualifies as an A, or who gets to evaluate an A work from C work from D work from F work. And those are the things that get students promoted. Those are not things that the board has any statutory work around, but also understanding that it is perfectly fine for a student to graduate with C's. But I'm just saying, like, that is saying that, like, you enter a different conversation trying to measure the exact skills you want students to learn if you are setting a benchmark based on some parents or some students and not others. Because a C students have been president of the United States. So like, it's just not very good. Like, we have to define what that
We're not
looks like.
naming
Okay.
names. Can I get a response?
But it's not a response. I think
Well,
it's
but
just
it-
like,
but it-
that's outside of our purview.
No, but I think we need to bring it into our purview and propose something, because I'm gonna be more blunt about this, is that the students, a DCPS diploma or a charter school diploma should mean you are ready to succeed in a living wage career or succeed in a community college. Like, you should have that level of skills to get a diploma. We have all sorts of policies in place right now which are hurting our kids. The ability to turn in work at any time during the school year is developing the worst habits imaginable for these kids. The fact you have kids graduating from high school who are chronically truant, and some schools systemically chronically truant, 80% of students chronically truant. So a C is worthless. I mean, if you're getting a C right now and you don't have any skills when you graduate, that is a disservice to students. You're setting poor expectations, and these kids aren't ready to succeed at anything. I mean, that is the sad reality of it, is we're sitting here talking about standards, we're talking about graduation requirements. We could interchange the graduation requirements with Montgomery County, with here, with anywhere. It's not addressing the core problem. That is that we are basically pretending that we're giving students diplomas that are really certificates of attendance. That's what we're doing. We're basically saying, you aged up through the system, you haven't obtained any skills that are gonna allow you to succeed, but here's a diploma. I mean,
Yeah, but the state board is not giving people. Let's be very clear.
Yeah,
That is
we don't-
not
I know, but
their job. I mean, we say we, I think
No,
that.
we as a
taking up an issue-
city,
Well, then
collective
that's-
we, and you raised this, I think that President Patterson, that, it has really struck me that we're doing all this work, but then the kids are just promoting upwards anyway, because they got a year older. And we've got to start holding kids accountable. And if we don't, we're not doing them any, when they get the diploma, I mean, we fail, because it's too late then to develop these skills. So,
Well, you're assuming that a C student doesn't have skills.
no, I'm not.
Yeah,
Well, and I think we have to think beyond just, what is it, like, what your level of expectation is. And also, like, again, there are people who can graduate with C's and still go out and get jobs. And that do have skills, and there are kids that graduate with honors who don't and can't like interview well. So like, it's a combination of things. It's not just social promotion issue. I think it is a deeper issue that has many layers that requires a multi-layered stakeholder conversation, but I don't know if it's a board issue.
And then I got a comment as well.
So,
Representative Williams.
yeah, I'll try to be brief here. I think, Representative Goulet, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt of saying like, you're coming from a place that you want all students to be prepared when they leave our schools.
Yeah.
And there's many questions embedded in that as to how we measure that and what that means and all the types of supports that are necessary for that. I think that this is a much larger conversation, and that I don't believe will be best suited for right now. I think the piece, a lot of these topics that are included in this do fall outside of our statutory purview. And yet, the thing that I see regularly in the charter sector and in DCPS that Representative Colson has also raised, which I think might be more constructive initially, would be to look at the grading policy. And because it's been something that came into effect during COVID, it came into effect in a very particular context. We are now, 4 or 5 years outside of that context. And we've also heard members of the SAC kind of bring that up, as well. So I think, I don't know the level of urgency, which I feel like we should address that. But I just think this is a huge, conversation that I don't want us to kind of get derailed with tonight.
Okay, I agree with it, but tonight.
I agree.
Representative West.
I agree with that, and I also agree that we need to think about what those grading policies look like.
Yeah.
Especially thinking as though like you can't fail. Like, I mean, you can, but you can't. Like, you can literally score a 0 and you score 50. And so like, I think, in this day and age where we try to be so politically correct, we are saying we're trying to save them so much that we're actually putting them in harm's way. And so I don't think we're actually doing anybody any favors with that. So, but I think we should definitely address those policies later on.
So what I will say to this, after hearing a lot of the conversation, which different point, I'll go back to you. Go ahead.
I wanted to note that I think in my mind, there's a clear separation between like the diplomas we give out and the skills that may or may not align with that, regardless of if a C student gets a diploma and has skills versus like an honor student who may not be able to interview well, like Director Butler said, versus promoting students between grade bands in accordance to like what like coursework they like turned in or what their grades look like between actual individual grades to me. Like, I think like those are kind of two separate conversations in my head. That's all I want to say. I feel like some of it falls outside of what we're able to do in terms of like what skills people are actually graduating with versus like, did they complete their assignments enough to pass like to the next grade?
So what I'll say after all of the discussion is that I think it is, on us to at least have the conversation about what we want to do about making sure we're preparing students for college, for careers, that they're graduating as close to that as possible, because everybody understands that my biggest thing is proficiency. That's been a big part of mine, and having a panel on that now. I know we're gonna have to define what that panel looks like. It's gonna have to be proposed to the tracker and everything like that, but I think what we're talking about is at least widening this conversation and having a conversation about it. Because I think this is gonna need more than what we're doing here. And I believe that once we decide on what that content and the definition and the parameters of that panel is, and then we propose that particular panel, have a discussion on it.
I'm sorry. I am a bit uncomfortable with this conversation only because I do want us to consider what our responsibilities are and what our authorities are. We are not a school. We're not. We don't set grading policies. We don't set promotion policies. We don't make decisions about the implementation of instruction or professional learning. We are not a school board. And I do very much believe, both as an individual and as a member of this board, our job is to care about what students learn. And I am also very concerned that we are not seeing the parts that we control. And we are wanting to get into other parts that we don't control. I would be very far from saying every standard that we have is perfect. I would be far from saying that we also have perfect licensure policies, which is in our purview. Like, I think there are a lot of things that we can be responsible for and we can actually do. And I am concerned because every time it's time for us to do one of our responsibilities, we want to talk about everybody else's responsibilities. And not to say that we shouldn't care about the overall picture, but I do worry. I do think locus of control is important. And I do think understanding what we control is important. I don't know when we having another retreat or anything else, but I distinctly remember when we started talking about the high school graduation requirements and why it mattered to do this work, we were having the same conversation and folks were like, the graduation requirements don't matter. And a lot of work went into those requirements. But it dawned on me when I was putting together that presentation that folks did not see the parts that we contribute to making that real. Like folks that I don't know if we talk about it like, all right, the standards, the requirements, the accountability mechanisms, because there are a lot of things that are on that list that we have control over. And I would say are far actually from perfect. And it makes me that yes, there are some things that I do think deserve yes, we see it, we diagnose the problem. But I'm worried if we put all of our energy into telling other people what to do, instead of doing what is in our control, then still nothing gets done. And unless we, as a board, want to champion becoming a school board, that is a different, because that's not, you know what I mean? I'm very team do your job. I'm also very, I recognize that systems are not neutral. And if we don't like the system, then we should work on changing the system. But I'm not going to pretend that my job is something that is not, because then my responsibilities don't get done. And I do think our responsibilities are important, and maybe there are intersections that we have not explored or we have not maximized as a state board. But I do worry about us focusing on everybody else's responsibility.
I'll let you respond, and I have a response.
I just want to state, if I gave the impression at all that I didn't think the work you guys did on the graduation requirements was grade A work, I want to make sure I clear that up, because for me, we just passed through that process. I think what was one of the most thoughtful processes we've ever seen. And we have really thoughtful and solid graduation requirements. I saw with social studies also. I think this board did an exceptional job on, creating a process on social studies and improving it. So I think we are doing our job within our small locus of control every step of the way and doing a great job of it. But I don't want to ignore this broader issue any longer, because it's eating away at me that we now have, I've been on this board 3 years, we have another high school graduation right now. And we know that students that are walking that stage, picking up the diploma, at least half of them don't have proficiency. And that's something we need to grapple with, I think. But I'll leave it at that.
To my point, I think we all understand what our responsibilities are. And I think we've entertained and had conversations and elevated conversations that were outside of our actual purview, whether they be violence interruption, we don't own a school, we don't make a contract or anything like that, but we have the conversation because we want to have people weigh in, talk about those particular subject matters so that we can have people to start thinking about ways to resolve their issues that are their responsibility, not that we're trying to tell them what to do, but we're trying to elevate what we're hearing from communities, from constituents. And I think it's incumbent, even in the title of what we do, we're the voice of our constituents that elect us to be here. And you have those conversations to make sure that that is being increased. We've all heard from DC Policy Center, whether people like tests or not, they gave us data. It is worth a conversation. It's not worth something sweeping underneath, under the rug, saying, okay, we're just gonna ignore that data because we don't like tests or whatever the case may be. That's a real indication of, are our children prepared or not? And I think having that information is worth a conversation. Even if it's not within our purview to affect it in a certain way, but having the conversation, so it's elevated to a level then. So those that do have that authority, start to think about what you do to address it. So I'm open to, as I said beforehand, to having some type of panel that discusses this. We'll have to put some parameters around what all goes into that particular panel, like the 12 panels. But I'm very open to having a panel. And what I would suggest for you, Vice President, is to put that into the tracker so we can start thinking about what that panel looks like.
Sounds great. Will do.
Was there any more discussion?
I think that I did not, for you Representative Goulet, I never questioned if you valued the work of the high school graduation requirements. If I felt like that was a question, you would definitely know it by now. I am saying though that so that's first, but I do want us to always be mindful about what our responsibilities are, and as we have these conversations, lift up the things that we can do. Not just that we can say or we can tell somebody else to do. And what I heard you saying was that this should go to a committee for them to explore. Of course, we can always have a conversation, but as we have certain conversations, I am pushing us to think about what our responsibilities are and how they build toward addressing this issue or not only the things that are outside of our purview.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, thank you. I recommend that you put it in.
Sure.
Thank you. Our next, because this just went all over the place.
Next is the July.
So we are at that one, July 9th, counseling hearing on lottery preference for charter school. And I believe that what definition, we talked about charter school thing, closed. For those students that were at charter school closed, they can get right.
Well, yeah, well, the hearing itself is already started, listed in Lynn, and Lynn's and staff just wants to know if the board will be testifying. I did let them know that the board has not voiced any opinion on this or has not done any work, so it's not like we have resolutions or anything around anything to point to. But I would bring it to you all to discuss, if that's something we would like to do. The hearing is July 9th at 2:30.
Looking for comments before I say, make a statement.
We introduce the bill. Sure.
I'm suggesting that we do, and I'll give you the rationale of why I think so. Because I remember when Eagle was closed, in my board, the effects overall, it wasn't just Ward 8, Amadon both got students, it was just this rippling effect out. So how do we really cure it? And that kind of happened haphazardly because it closed without, PCSB made that decision without really the thoughts of how that goes out. And so I would like us to chime in on that, so to speak, in some way.
I think the question I was gonna ask is how exactly do we weigh in as a board? We don't have a board opinion. I would recommend that we reach out to like the Office of the Student Advocate, who I know was involved in actually doing some of the work with the timeline for the Eagle closure, and then providing how this might affect families based on their experience. I don't know if we, as a board, wanted to put together a position, and if folks wanted to vote on that or something, but I guess the question should be to leadership, what is the path to getting a point of view on this so that the board would be able to testify? If not, then I would imagine the testimony of individual members would be appropriate, or if we wanted to ask either of our offices to testify.
Thank you. We're gonna take them. Okay.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Thompson, and I agree, what we do it as a board, and that may not be the route or individuals that want to provide, testimony to that particular point. And the question was basically, do we do it as a board? But what I'm hearing is more likely going to be individual and not that may want to weigh in on it. Trying to allow staff to talk. So they can provide commentary and content as well. From what I'm hearing right now, is more so would be a individual.
I mean, the board, unless, it's up to the board, so if the board wants to make a statement, then the board should discuss and decide. The staff didn't have anything to say.
Right, right.
So the only perspective we've heard is, yours is 20%. I don't know what other board members.
Are there other,
Legislation was introduced by Councilman Parker.
Parker and
Yeah, Jim texted around to everybody and
Bro,
code.
And from.
Representative
It
Anderson?
depends on what we're gonna say.
Yes.
Right.
We can agree.
Yeah.
Agree, and I'll testify.
I mean, I think if you're asking for like my opinion,
We are.
the board doesn't have any work or resolutions on this. Wait, I mean, I don't, maybe, was there a resolution passed about Eagle Academy?
I don't think sure was.
Yeah, so again, it's
You
just
kind
not,
of it happened, and we let over, you should be. They did their thing.
I would just need a lot of, input from board members about what.
they do not have a board position.
Right,
There
about
are
what should go in
individual
the
board
testimony.
members, who have, but I think if it is up to you all as members to decide what you would like to do. But just note of record, there is no established board opinion. Like surrounding this issue that has been written down or recorded. And
And I
you all would just have to make a decision.
And
Discuss.
I'm looking around, I want to hear from other individuals, but what I'm hearing seems to be the board does not and would not, but individuals can if they would like to choose. That's what I'm seeing right now. The board does not, and is not trying to formulate a opinion.
Okay,
And so it would be up to individuals, okay?
okay, I will let everybody know there was no board that's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Have one more thing.
Was Representative Williams, CEO.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I brought this up last month, and the principal of schools at Walls High School is retiring. She had literally been at one single institution, the school at Walls, for 40 years. She was a principal she was a social studies teacher actually for about 19 years. Then she moved into an instructional coach role for a little less than a decade, then an assistant principal role, then most recently the principal role. Yes, this is a public meeting, so there's a plan from the community to be able to honor her. I'm not gonna share the details of that right now. But I would like for us to sponsor a ceremony resolution. I've reached out to many of my colleagues and people of the community to get input to build out the CR. And Jen, I'm happy to kind of share that with you in the coming week.
Thank you.
The CRs are a lot easier. I don't have a problem with that. If there is any other discussion about it, and you'll work with her.
Yes, heavily. Yeah.
So yes.
Thank you.
CR. All right, let's leave that case up there. Kind of moved around a lot and everything like that. Okay. All right. Yeah, we're down to the very end where. Good. I want to thank the members for their time and engagement tonight. Our next meeting is our public meeting on June 17th. Members of the public can visit SBOE.dc.gov to learn how to submit and present testimony at the upcoming public meeting. All public witnesses must submit. I want to say this because we can have a problem after the fact. submit written copy of their testimony to our staff for the public record. Seeing no further business before the state board, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It has been moved by Representative Henderson. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded by Representative Best. Okay, all in favor, aye. Any opposition? Carried. This working session is adjourned at exactly 8:27 on June 3rd, 2022. Thank you.
When was?